Order. Could I ask everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Bell.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Berner.
Here.
Mr. Farrell. Ms. Kay.
Here.
Mr. Spencer.
Here.
Ms. Tillerson. Here. Ms. McClung. Here.
I note that notwithstanding the absence of one council member, we have a quorum. The first item of business is approval of the minutes of the Town Council's October 14th meeting. Those minutes were circulated in advance to council members. Are there any edits, corrections, or changes?
Not for me. I saw two administrative things. I'll pass that on to Petra.
Good. Any other changes? With those changes being made, the minutes are deemed approved. The second approval of minutes is for the special call town council meeting of October 21st, 2025. That was also circulated in advance. Any edits or changes to those? No.
Not for me, thanks.
None.
Minutes are deemed approved as well. Next agenda item is citizen comments on agenda items only. The outset, are there any citizen comments on agenda items other than perhaps the public hearing matters? I suspect that's what a lot of the folks are here for. No citizen comments on agenda items, so we have three presentations. I'd first like to invite to the dais, the stand, Alexa Schubert, who's with the Charleston County and going to talk to us about the proposed TST, Transportation Sales Tax.
Okay, good morning. I'm trying to figure out how to get what is on my laptop here, up here. So, what's that? Oh, you got it? Okay. All right, so my name is actually Devery Datoma. Alex is with Chernoff and Newman. She's the consultant we hired to help us with the public engagement piece.
Apologies.
No worries. I'm with Charleston County Public Works. I'm the deputy director there. And we kind of wanted to get, everyone involved in our process, talk about the sales tax, what we've done, where we've been, and hear the input on what we could do better, lessons learned, and everything. So for 2 decades, we had a first half penny in 2004, and then we had another one pass in 2016. That has led to billions of dollars of infrastructure improvements for Charleston County. So now here we are, and I'm thinking about, our council's thinking about going for extending that sales tax so that it remains at the 1 penny that we currently have. So, to help them decide if we should move forward with that, they're asking for us to come to all the municipalities, to go to any public meeting that we are requested to show, and get input on a potential extension of the sales tax, and also to hear your concerns and get your input. So just so everyone's aware, we have today invested over $4.56 billion in infrastructure improvements. The first half penny and the second half penny, they were a different mix of how much was contributed towards green belts, how much was contributed towards infrastructure, and how much was public transit. But if you take the average of those, it was roughly 12-13% for green belts, roughly 62% for infrastructure, and 25% for public transit. So again, they kind of looks a little bit different for the first and the second, but a lot of the input we're looking at is what percentage should we see towards these categories if we were to move forward. So an interesting fact, out of that $4.56 billion that I said that we invested in, actually $3.4 million actually came from the sales tax, and we were able to leverage that money for an additional $1.2 million from outside funding sources. That could be state infrastructure bank contributing money. It could be the federal government contributing money. So we're able to get these projects started, leverage all the work we do to get more outside funding sources to stretch our money even further. So fun fact, nearly half of every dollar comes from visitors and other sources outside of Charleston County. That can include your commuters from Dorchester County and Berkeley County as well as those matching funds. So what have we done? What are the major milestones of our accomplishments that we have done with all this money? We have resurfaced over 895 miles of roads. As bad as our roads are, we are actually 73% better, our pavement is, than the rest of the state, and that's because of the sales tax. We've also been able to construct close to 50 miles of new bike pedestrian paths and multi-use paths, and we have improved over 69 intersections for safety. We've also, fun fact, over nearly half of Charleston County's land is protected green space. That's the second highest in the state, which is pretty remarkable looking at the population in Charleston County. That's with a combination of the green belts and the Francis Marion Forest. For public transit, what have we accomplished? So we've been able to purchase over 125 vehicles. We've installed over 146 shelters and benches. And of course, we have our LCRT project that is going to be under construction here in the next couple of years. We have been able to increase service miles by 226%, and passenger trips have increased 120%. So why is the sales tax important? What has changed? Our population has grown over 33% since 2004. And not only that, vehicle registrations are up 41%. We're actually projected to grow an additional 42,000 in the next decade. So that means more people, more traffic, more accidents. So just to give you an idea where we are today, we're out here, we're having all these listening sessions, we're presenting what we've done, asking for feedback, and that was, at the request of County Council. So we'll be meeting in the spring of next year to really talk about what everyone's saying, all the comments that we're getting, to get a list from all the municipalities of what they would like to see, how they would like to see it, and of course, if you support it or not. So whenever you're taking this survey, just for the general public as well as the town of Kiowa, what we would like to really y'all think about is, again, what percentages would you like to see towards Greenbelt program? How important is that to you? What about bike ped? What percentage do you think should be given towards that? Public transit and roadways as well. Under each one of these, we give some ideas of what those potential projects would look like. So here we are asking you to fill out the online questionnaire, attend any meeting, public meeting that we may have, submit any comments and questions, we'll get back to you, and stay informed. And the main ask for the town of Kiowa is if y'all could maybe talk, do y'all support it? What would it take to get y'all to support it? And could y'all provide a publicly vetted list of what kind of projects you would like to see that would help you support it? So with that, I have a QR code. If anyone wants to take a picture, you can go here and take our survey and let us know how you feel, what you're thinking about the sales tax for it to remain in place at 1 cent. You can tell us what you think, where you think we have been successful, where we have failed, where do you think these key investment categories should be spent, and is there anything else that we're not thinking about that we should have on there? That is all I have.
Questions?
So I have a question for you, please. You mentioned you have different pots, public transit, roads, the green belt, et cetera. You guys must have something in mind where the majority of the funds are going to be spent, and I'm just asking what that is.
We do not. In fact, this is done a completely different way than we had before. Before, it's kind of been, we've gone to the larger municipalities. I don't even think the town has been solicited in the past always. What kind of key projects would you like to see put on a referendum? And that's kind of how it's been done, and it's been more of a political choice. So we're trying to get everyone's input this time, and we're trying to start big picture first. What percentage do you think should be given to green belts? What percentage do you think should be given towards public transit? We're actually separating out bike ped and roadways. So we haven't even started the list yet. Again, we're here, we're asking y'all to help us provide that list. I could tell you just from hearing from other municipalities, green belts is a lot more important. For instance, from Mount Pleasant, they've said that they would like to focus more of their money on green belts to stop growth. whereas somebody else might want more road projects. So we're seeing a hybrid of all kinds of things from everyone, and no one is the same. So we're kind of trying to look at it big picture like that before we actually start picking projects. I think once we get your list, we'll know, are they more green belts, are they more road projects? And we're gonna, again, put that out towards the public, put it towards our elected officials, and let them kind of decide how it's all going to look like, if they decide to move forward with it.
If I could follow up on Councilmember Berner's question, because I think this is what's confused some folks.
Sure.
This is not the referendum.
No.
This is trying to build early support for approving a sales tax referendum.
I wouldn't even say it's necessarily to get support. There's a lot of misinformation there about we have done nothing, so we're trying to show you what we have done. And I think the ask from our council is, do y'all support keeping the penny to improve our infrastructure, green belts, public transit? They don't even know if they're gonna put it on referendum.
So assuming they move forward, and I think one of the questions related to the division is this input to frame the actual language of the referendum. So
Absolutely.
in fact, the referendum may specify that of the penny sales tax, 20% will go to Greenbelt, X% will go to infrastructure, X% will go to roads, rather than leaving that to county to allocate subsequently.
Correct, and I don't think they've even decided what that referendum question would look like. Will the projects, one concern we've heard is list out the projects, because I think there's a trust issue where you might take that money and, take it here. So those are the kind of feedback we're looking to get back to them. So this will even help develop the referendum language, absolutely. If
Yeah,
it moves
the reason
forward.
I was asking that question, because Johns Island, for the most part, does not have any kind of mass transportation. And I would anticipate, without doing any kind of survey, that the majority of the residents would put that as a high priority. But in other locations where Charleston County is, well, they have adequate mass transportation. They don't really need it. So that's what I was trying to figure out. I was hoping to hear you say you're going to put some money, pigeonholed at least, for going to mass transit for Johns Island, because that's a big need for this place.
So I think what they're looking for is to hear y'all get together, publicly vet that list, and if that is something that y'all all feel strongly about, bring that forth so we can tell our county council about that and say that's really important to the town of Kiowa or to the public.
All right, fair enough.
So I'll emphasize that our Infrastructure and Public Works Committee is taking up transit, both within the island and with CARTA and others. Ron's going to be part of that from CARTA and discussing those things. We're putting the new MUSC down here to service Johns Island. It's been a big focus item that's been increasing here, is getting CARTA service at least to Freshfields to support the workforces, the vacationers. There's a lot of constituents and benefactors from it. The other one that really comes to mind is bike path safety up and down Main Road, Bohicket, Betsy Carrison. We're undertaking just in the early stages of project to connect the Kiowa bike path from Freshfields to Town Hall. And we're actually hoping for some county support to fund that, and have met with the county on it. But going all the way, at least to Ace Hardware, maybe up to Maybank, it's very narrow. It's under poor repair. I actually got a call from a community member just today about that. So it's important. I'll share that 2 days ago when I was driving up Bohicket, I thought my mirror was going to hit somebody that was biking in this wide side of the road on Bohicket. I mean, there was just no room to maneuver, and it's a very dangerous situation.
So currently, just so y'all are aware, if it wasn't listed as one of the featured projects early on, all we can do towards bike ped, which we have done a great deal, as y'all have seen.
Just not here.
We get 1 million. I think we did help reconstruct the 3,000 of the Beach Walker Park, so that was used with sales tax funds. But this, what you were just talking about, that has been asked for us to look at, and there's some permitting issues. So typically we get 1 million a year, just so everyone's aware. Right now we get 1 million a year towards bike ped, and we get over, I'd say on average, 150 projects that are submitted competing against that $1 million. Typically you'll see 5 get selected, but there's some criteria like Is it connecting a school? Is it filling in a gap? So there's some good legit criteria that we have to put it through to determine if it gets funding. That one is pretty expensive, looking at the numbers in the past. But if that was something really important, again, that would be something that y'all could get publicly vetted and say this is important. The program we have now is not working to get funded, but if y'all put it on y'all's list, that would be a way to consider. This is, again, a new, fresh look on how we're doing things.
It's not a leisure trail thing, it's a safety thing.
Yeah, it's not going to be the same as it has. For roadways, in fact, this time we're separating out bike ped because there is such a need than we have in the past. We've always lumped that in roadways, but like I'll tell you, one large project that we hear a lot about is the North Bridge. There's a lot of deaths, people walking on the median. They put the linears up, they still walk. That's over a $70 million project. So we did feel it important this round to kind of separate out the bike ped category outside of the roadway projects.
Appreciate you doing that, thanks.
And I have a question. I'm assuming via the QR code you can figure out who's casting their opinion from where? It's all
yes.
bike. And then how do you prioritize which projects you decide to go forward with?
So we have not got that far. Again, we're going to get the feedback from the survey, present it towards Charleston County Council. Also, we're going to take the list from all the municipalities, give it to them to consider, and then we'll go through that process in the spring of next year. As you can see, it will help develop what the project list will be looking like. So that's later to come. I think before we even get to that point, they want to see if people support it and what are the major categories that everyone's looking at before they decide to move forward with it.
Okay.
I applaud County Council for the early engagement process. Lessons learned from what happened with
Right.
regard to the Mark Clark extension and the failure of that tax referendum. And you mentioned trust issue, and that's something that had been discussed kind of generally out there in the ether, and the lack of trust. I think one of the challenges is, like, before making a decision whether you support this, and particularly whether, like, the Kiowa community, the Sea Islands community supports this initiative, is better understanding of what the county's priorities are with current funds. For example, there's supposed to be $75 million coming back from Mark Clark.
Right.
What is that going to be allocated to? And I think part of the frustration from the standpoint of the lower Sea Islands, lower Johns Island at least, is it seems like there's relatively little attention being paid to the roads infrastructure here. Understanding Charleston County is a big place, a lot of diverse needs. Kiowa and Seabrook and Lower Johns Island disproportionately contribute property taxes to the county, disproportionately contribute accommodations taxes to the county. We're a substantial employment engine. One of the largest county employers is Kiowa Island Golf Resort. Kiowa Island Club is not that far along, and yet it doesn't seem like the roads infrastructure here gets much attention. Main road corridor projects, the lower half was dropped off, focused on the flyover. None of the little things have been posed by Johns Island Task Force, Rational Roads, or others that impact getting on and off the island from this end have really been addressed by the county heretofore.
So the segment C was not, we had several public meetings on that, and we could not get the public support. So it there is a funding issue, but we could not get the public support to move that one forward. I do feel like it is going to be very congested by the traffic numbers. What I've seen, it is going to be, but we could not get the public support. So the $75 million, there has been no discussions by County Council on what to do with that money, and they have not asked for any staff recommendations, just so you're aware. And honestly, if they probably did, we would say if there's any needs for current projects we promised to the public, we would probably say we need to fulfill what we promised the public and put that money towards all the inflation costs. But they have really not discussed that yet.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have one quick question for you. In regards to the spring 2026, to get something, a consolidated list from us, is that need it by like March or 2026, or are you guys trying to get something from us by the end of this year?
We are trying to get something by the end of this year if
Okay.
possible. Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You have my inputs. You have my inputs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Sure.
To come visit us. Next, we're going to hear from the town's audit firm. We've completed our fiscal year audit, and we'll hear the results of that.
Well, thank you all for having me here. Again, my name's Grant Davis. I'm a partner with Malden and Jenkins, and I prepared a PowerPoint. Just so you're aware, I went through this exact same presentation with your audit committee last month, I think it was in October, early October, and received their feedback on the audited or the audit process, certainly, and the financial statements. Had a few changes that they identified in the financial statements that we have addressed, and I assume you all have copies of that at this point, and have had the opportunity to review that. But before I get too far into the presentation, I don't have a slide about this, but I just want to congratulate you on your audit committee. They're appropriately involved, I think, that's my view on it. Pretty active, ultimately, in their oversight responsibility. So again, just want to congratulate you on that. That's not that common to have to even have an audit committee at a municipality. So that may be news to you, or it may not be, but again, I think it's a very positive thing, and they take their job very seriously, and it's apparent to us. And so with that, again, just going to go through a few things about the audit process. We've ultimately issued a document that we call our Auditor's Discussion and Analysis document. That document's purpose is to communicate to you all some things that we're required to communicate as a part of the audit process. I'll go through some of those here today. I'm certainly not going to read all of them to you, but just to hit the highlights of the things that I think are of the most relevance in your oversight, ultimately, and acceptance of the audit. I've got a few charts in here, some really, really high-level stuff, and then just a few other things to mention and keep you aware of. This is just a little bit about who we are as a firm. I won't read all this to you other than to say this is governmental audits, for better or for worse. There's a significant part of what we do as a firm, about 150,000 hours of service annually specific to state and local government entities. So beginning here, if you look at the annual comprehensive financial report itself, you'll notice that there are two reports ultimately in that document that are on our letterhead. The first is at the very beginning of the document. It's our independent auditor's report. It goes on for about 4 pages, but I think if you're going to take anything away from it, we've ultimately issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. Unmodified is really not glamorous language, but it's, from your perspective, really the only acceptable result in a financial statement audit. So again, a clean opinion on the town's financials for its fiscal year ended June 30, 2025. The second report is at the very end of the document. We call this our yellow book report. It's our report on internal controls and compliance with laws, regulations, grant agreements, so forth and so on, in accordance with government auditing standards. That's that acronym GAS. This report is not designed to offer an opinion, but to provide what we call negative assurance, which is to say that as a part of conducting our audit, if we identify any internal control deficiencies that are material to the financial statements or any instances of noncompliance that are material to the financial statements, that we report those things to you all. And I'm happy to say that we did not identify any internal control deficiencies material to the financials or noncompliance.
If I could just on that particular point, because we may touch upon this later.
Certainly. That's
not actually a testing of internal controls. That's not an assessment of internal controls.
That's accurate. Okay. These begin the required communications, and again, these are really kind of relatively long. I've tried to shorten them up as much as I can for the purposes of a PowerPoint, but just to hit a few highlights, as has been the case for really the last 15 years, the GASB, which is the standard-setting body for all governments from an accounting perspective, has continued to be active in terms of new accounting standards that have to be implemented. There were 2 such standards to be implemented by the town for, again, its fiscal year 25. That was GASB statement 101 and 102. 102, neither had really any impact, significant impact on the town's financial statements, but just to keep you abreast that we are required to implement those by the dates that are stipulated by the GASB. The financial statements themselves, I'm assuming you all are aware of this, and it's even disclosed in the financials, but include a variety of estimates. We ultimately audit those estimates, what we call inputs and outputs. So from a quantitative and a qualitative perspective to make sure that they are reasonable and again lend themselves to this materially stated financial statements. Significant estimates are things like the pension liability, everything that's associated with that, other post-employment benefits or what we call OPEB, so forth and so on.
Before you leave that page, I'm sorry, would you rather have questions as you go through it or at the very end?
I have no preference, so whatever you would like to do, I'm happy to try to address them as we
Mayor, how
go.
would you like to?
If you have a question at this point in time, feel free to ask it.
Thanks. All right, so back on, so it's on page or slide 4. I'm asking this because I'm the engineer in the group rather than the accountant, although I like numbers and not the dollar numbers. You indicate here that town is not involved in any controversial or emerging issues. And my question is really, what kind of issues are those? And what would you see in other towns that would be a concern?
Honestly, it'd be very rare to see something like that. To be honest, I've never seen such a controversial or emerging issue. I think the only thing that would be reasonable to communicate at this point would be something like you had a really aggressive strategy for implementing a new accounting standard that was, maybe a strange interpretation of that, something like that. It'd be extremely rare that you would have anything.
Okay, so I'm following up on that. I'm going to go back to the previous page. As you're going through an audit, what kind of red flags would you observe that would be alarming, that would have to be brought to our attention? And I don't mean with this client, but for other clients. I'm trying to get an appreciation of how the audits are performed.
Well, so it's a financial statement audit. And so its goal is we don't prepare your financial statements, it's not our information. We audit what's provided to us by you all. And there's a slide about this, but ultimately we receive representation from the town's management. It says the information that we've requested and provided is complete, accurate to their knowledge, all those types of things. And so our job, again, is to issue an opinion on the financial statements of the town. So, you think about all the different basic financial statements, your footnotes and things like that.
So what would be a concern? You get that information. What makes us so good? I guess I'm trying to understand. Why are we so good?
I don't know that you are that good, just normal. I think it's the right way to say it. Now, from a financial perspective, you're extremely healthy. But I don't know that I would go from a good bad scale. I think you're doing exactly what you should be doing, which is good, but it's not necessarily better than anybody else that's getting an unmodified opinion on financial statements.
Okay, I got it. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. To just continue through here, the financial statements disclosures, if you open up the annual comprehensive financial report, this is the longest part. This just seems to go on and on and on and on and on. And that's a part of our audit as well. So all the verbiage in there, any numbers, any disclosures that are made are part of our audit. And of course, our responsibility here is this in the last sentence under this bullet, is to evaluate the overall neutrality, consistency, and clarity of the disclosures. Happy to say we received full cooperation from management throughout the audit. We didn't have any disagreements on accounting issues, to our point from earlier, or financial reporting matters. Those are always very positive things. I wouldn't be here now probably talking to you in this manner if we had something that was a negative with that. We didn't have any audit adjustments, which is to say that as a part of our audit, now this is unique, I will say this, most of the time when we come in to do a financial statement audit, we identify certain things that are required to be adjusted. So there are inaccuracies in the information that have been provided to us. None of that ultimately was identified as a part of the town's audit for fiscal year 25, which is a very positive thing, which is to say that everything was right when it was given to us from a material perspective. I mentioned here that there were no past adjustments, so again, I've mentioned material over and over and over again, and materiality is a huge part of a financial statement audit. However, we didn't identify anything as being incorrect and decide not to adjust it or correct it from a materiality perspective. So we had no past adjustments. That's what we call that. When we don't adjust something because it's immaterial, we call it a past adjustment. So we didn't have any of those. If we had, we would have communicated them to you. And again, as I mentioned a moment ago, we received representations from management as to the accuracy, the completeness of the information that was provided to us throughout the audit. The only thing I'll mention here on this slide is auditor independence. We're required to be independent of the town in accordance with our professional standards. We've had no issues maintaining that. I do mention that you all have engaged our advisory group to perform the operational and performance assessment relative to the finance department. We take great pains to make sure that you have different people involved in that, and that we have a dedicated independence partner who maintains contact from an audit and from the advisory side to make sure that we have no breaches in independence, and we continue to feel good about that as to continuing to be independent with the town relative to that. And ultimately, I think it does help that our advisory group can talk to us, use some of our institutional knowledge as having been your auditors for several years to use in their evaluation and assessment. So this is just financial highlights side. So again, this is 100,000 feet. This is all where if I'm going to give you a good grade, this is where you're going to get the good grade. This is all the very positive information. So your balance sheet, all funds, all activities for a government, it's called the statement of net position. You've got just one column, and the highlights of that, you can see $65.5 million in total assets, and I've broken that down by the largest buckets there. $46 million in cash, the vast majority of your total assets, versus liabilities of only nearly $6 million. The vast majority of total liabilities being pension, which is controlled by the state of South Carolina, and other post-employment benefits, and that gives you equity, or what we call net position, of nearly $60 million at the end of fiscal year 25. That increase in net position, or there was an increase in net position of about $6.5 million. That's that very last bullet there. As you can see, total revenues of 20, total expenses of 13, change in net position, an increase of $6.5 million from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 25. This is obviously a chart. Revenues are in blue, expenses are in, I think we'll call that gold, and net position is in black. And just historical analysis for the last 5 years of what those have looked like. Of primary interest typically in any municipal government is the general fund. It's got typically has the most activities. Same concept as 2 slides ago, but total assets $31 million versus liabilities of 3.2 gives you fund balance of 28.2, and 28 of that is unassigned. And unassigned fund balance is basically fund balance that's available for appropriation to use how you, as this council, see fit. If you look at the liquidity of the fund balance as compared to, well, you can see here the current ratio down at the bottom, 9.71. But if you want to look at how the spending, how much fund, you sort of add some flavor to how much fund balance do you actually have. If we take your spending, so the general fund, I'm just going to try to see if I had it on this slide. The general fund spent $9.5 million in fiscal year 25. And if we simply divide that by 12 months, that gives us $795,000 a month is how much the general fund spends, basically. And at that spending level, if you were to continue to do that, the general fund has almost 3 years of expenditures in its fund balance. So there's another way to say that is if you didn't take in another dollar, you could operate at the level you did in fiscal year 25 in terms of spending for nearly 3 more years, which is extremely, extremely healthy. Probably also unique in the state of South Carolina. This is just fund balance for the last 5 years, so you can see each column's color is only a different color just because it's a different year, but how that has increased from $25 million in 21 up to $35 million in 25. This is, again, just the income statement for the general fund. I've already gone through this from an expenditure side here, but the general fund's fund balance increased about $4.2 million. I'm a chart guy. As you can probably tell here, this is just helpful for me to look at. This is just your revenues in the general fund by type. So these are the different types of revenues in a pie chart. Same concept here for expenditures. This is broken down by functional level. So we call general government, judicial, public safety, so forth. Those are called functions. Those are not departments. There are departments that make up the functions, but you can see how that spending takes place in the general fund. And then just a few other items. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, the GASB continues to be active. There are new standards that will be required to be implemented, and in fiscal year 26, and then beyond, the ones that we have to date are 103 and 104. There's a brief blurb there to the extent you want to read that, and there are some projects that have not made their way to a formal statement yet. But otherwise, well, I'll say this, we offer free continuing education to all of our clients. Love to have you to the extent, I mean, the finance staff, it's obviously most relevant for them, but we've also got operational type things, our advisory group. We'd always love to have you sit with us for a virtual day to go through those things. And if you are interested, please let me know, and I can get you signed up on that. So otherwise, any other comments or questions about any of this that I can try to answer?
Just before council members may want to ask additional questions, a couple of observations and comments. First, thank you for the work you do, but I want to note for the record the extraordinary work that our finance director and town treasurer, Dorota Schubert, and her staff perform to get us to this point. And I think you would agree that, you know, they are easy to work with.
Wholeheartedly.
And I also want to commend, who couldn't be here today, the chairman of our Ways and Means Committee, Councilmember Farrell, for his leadership on this. As you noted, we are blessed. We have a very strong audit committee. And I think you would probably also agree, unusually strong relative to other communities.
Absolutely.
Of this size. And so we're blessed about all of that. But we don't want to rest on our laurels. You know, we've gotten a very good opinion, but as we've noted at prior council meetings, you know, we always want to make sure we can do things, I mean, make sure we're doing things the right way all the time. And if we need to do things better or improve, we will do so. So that's the reason we went out, and you mentioned the separate arm of Malden Jenkins that is actually providing the assessment on our internal controls. We've gotten preliminary report back that's still in progress. It's a good and bad news situation. The good news is that there were no material findings related to that, but they identified a host of areas where we can tighten things up, and that's what we will do. But we'll have that presentation here at a future council meeting, but that's something that we're going to be continuing to work on. You mentioned somewhat unique. We've talked about this previously. There aren't many other municipalities that are sitting on, and now it's actually, as of year end, it was 46, it's now $49 million in reserve funds, significant majority of those unrestricted. That's both a good thing and not so good thing, which we can talk about a little bit further in the context of our Kiowa Next comprehensive plan. So anyway, but thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Grant.
Thank you all.
Next, we have Matt Williams. I'm delighted that Matt is able to join us today. He's the relatively new president and CEO of the Low Country Land Trust. He was chosen to replace Ashley, the prior CEO, just a short while ago, and the Low Country Land Trust underwent a national search to end up selecting Matt, who'd previously been in a senior leadership role here in South Carolina with the Nature Conservancy. I had the good fortune of meeting and talking with Matt at a recent program involving a recent acquisition, Grayson Oaks on Upper Johns Island. And we were comparing notes on a lot of things. Most of this community is familiar with the good work that the Kiowa Conservancy does in acquiring land or entering into conservation easements. The Low Country Land Trust does the same thing, larger footprint across South Carolina, but a substantial presence actually in our backyard. And I think that's something that you may want to touch upon, but Matt, welcome.
Mayor Belton. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the Town Council for having the Low Country Land Trust. I'm honored to have an opportunity to talk about our conservation work and why it's important. I love this picture here because it captures the beauty of summertime salt marsh, which is a bright green color, and it also captures the connection between people and land and water and salt marsh. You know, we can see that it's low tide, so that indicates the ebb and flow of water, but you can also imagine that there's water hitting those islands and those rooftops, and that water runs someplace. Well, it ends up right in those creeks. So I like for us to be thinking about things like that. So I'm a conservationist. I've been in conservation for over a decade. And I think once you become a conservationist, you will have a conservation origin story. And that might be a particular day, a place you visited, an event that took place, or it might be a person. And for me, it was growing up on the Santee Delta. I grew up on the North Santee River side of the Delta in Georgetown County. My dad was a biologist, he still is, and he specialized in waterfowl impoundment management, particularly brackish impoundment management. He ran a place called Kinlaw Gun Club, which is on the north side of the Delta. I have no doubt that that's why I do what I do today. That is the historic rice mill at Kinlaw, and that's Pleasant Meadow Creek coming in, and that is still standing and in good shape. It's worth noting the DuPont family bought these properties as a duck hunting club in the early 20th century. It was later purchased by Ted Turner, who we all are familiar with. Ted Turner put an easement on the property with Ducks Unlimited back in the early 2000s. So it is permanently protected, 5,000 acres. I was a kid once. That is me with my faithful dog Blaze. I was a very, very lucky kid to get to grow up on this property. If you could get through the mosquitoes and the flies in the summertime, fall and winter and spring was a glorious place to be on the Santee Delta. Fish, hunt, crabbing, shrimping, just enjoying nature, watching ducks in the wintertime. All right, here's a picture of my dad. This was taken about 15 years ago. We're on the Santee River. And if I had $1 for every time I've seen my dad raise his hands like this, that's why I chose this picture. I could probably protect some land on Johns Island. But he would oftentimes, I remember there was one day in particular we were fishing on the Santee Delta, and he told me and my brother to look at the horizon. And he said, "What do you see?" And we said, "You know, we see marsh, we see trees." The point he was trying to make is that what you don't see, which are bridges, houses, large developments, factories. And that, to me, is the power of land protection. This is last year on Father's Day. Those are me and my two kids in the very same spot in our boat, and the Santee Delta looks exactly the same today as it did 30 years ago when my dad waved his hands in the air. All right, so that's my background, my origin, and why I work in conservation. I do this for my kids and for a better future for the South Carolina Low Country and the world, because we are the Low Country and we are South Carolina, but we're also part of the planet. So what is a land trust? And more importantly, what is the Low Country Land Trust? So we've been around for nearly 40 years. And you can see that we work in 17 counties, and we have over 540 easements in those 17 counties. And we protected over 163,000 acres in that focus area. Primarily what we do is we write conservation easements with willing landowners to protect their property. And then we also do what we call fee simple acquisitions. And those are typically when we buy land and then transfer it to a county park or to DNR for state lands, and sometimes to federal partners like Fish and Wildlife Service or the Forest Service. We believe that land is who we are as people. And that protecting land enhances our quality of life in the Low Country. This guy here is standing in a longleaf pine forest. Longleaf pine forest used to extend from southern Virginia all the way to East Texas, 90 million acres, one of the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world. It rivals the Amazon rainforest, if you can believe it. And this is what it used to look like. It was open spaces. It was affected by annual fire events or a fire event every 3 or 4 years. But these places are special and they matter. And our connection to these places matter. This is our sense of place. You have it right here on your town seal. There's an egret. Is it an egret or is it a blue heron? Anyway, it's one of the reasons why people move here. That's my daughter, Madeline, holding a redfish in the Kiowa River, by the way. And on the right there are kayakers on a coastal expeditions kayaking trip right around Kiowa. So we want to preserve this sense of place and this quality of life. So in addition to people, there are great wildlife visitors. Every year we get painted buntings here on Kiowa Island. That's a pair of painted buntings. I was doing some research on them. I learned this morning that the male shows up about 3 weeks before the female does. I guess he's getting things ready before her arrival or before the females arrive because they find mating pairs each spring. But they use these maritime forests on Kiowa for breeding. And they'll hang out here through the end of the summer, and then they'll head back to Central America for the winter. Roseate spoonbills on the right. I'm sure you see these around Kiowa. When I was a kid growing up in the low country, we didn't have roseate spoonbills. I think that that's an indicator of climate changing, but it's also an indicator that we have a lot to be proud of in the low country. These birds are coming here because they have clean water, they have food to eat, and they have places to survive. I think it's really important that we remember that Kiowa is right on the edge of the Ace Basin, which is one of the most important ecological projects, land protection projects in the world. All right, now for the bad news. Once it's gone forever. The image on the left is becoming more common in the low country. This is a picture from the Post and Courier. Both of these are. Can I see a show of hands of how many people have sat at the intersection of Main Road and Highway 17? All right. Waiting for the guy to stop looking at a cell phone and make the turn so that you can get going, right? All right. When you protect land, especially in the outside the urban growth boundary, it helps improve traffic issues. There's a lot of data that proves that that's true. Low Country Land Trust, these are some highlights of last year. Down near the Savannah River, we see Meyer Lake. That is 972 acres that we protected right on the edge of the Savannah Wildlife Refuge. We have Little Fee, if you move up into the Ace Basin, that one is 313 acres. Hyatt Station up in Upper Colleton County, that's 561 acres. And let's fly up to the Santee Delta where I grew up. You see Fairfield 2, that's in Charleston County, that's 254 acres. And then Grayson Oaks, which the mayor mentioned, is on Johns Island at Main and Humbert Roads. That's a 94-acre project that we completed last year. I want to scroll down to some notes here. So the county proposed to purchase Grayson Oaks as a proposed burn site. And of course, there was a lot of community opposition to that. The land trust reached out to the landowners and we negotiated with them for 2 years. And we were told at one point that this would be impossible to pull off, but we're fairly tenacious, we stick at it, and we have to be patient in conservation. These things take time. We ended up negotiating a deal to purchase the land for $500,000 below fair market value, and it was purchased with money from the South Carolina Conservation Bank and the Charleston County Greenbelt Fund. Now we are now leasing it to a farmer who's going to be called Peculiar Pig, and if you've never had their meat before, it's really, really, really tasty. All right, we have to monitor over 550 conservation easements every single year, and we do it every single year. So in 2024, we hit our 100% mark for our monitoring requirements. We were awarded over $11 million for different projects. We protected over 2,300 acres, and that was over 9 different transactions. 5 of those 9 transactions were for fee simple acquisitions so the public can have green space to enjoy nature.
What does monitoring entail?
Yes, thank you. So we have a stewardship staff. They have to visit these properties every single year and make sure that the landowner is adhering to the terms of the easement that was written for that property. So all easements look a little bit different, but generally speaking, you can build a certain amount of impervious surface on your property, such as like a house or a shed or a guest house for your kids if they want to do that. We're making sure that they're not doing anything beyond those limitations. All right, this was a big year for us. Back in August, we opened our Low Country Center for Conservation in West Ashley. We didn't realize until we got open and people started contacting us for meeting spaces how much this was needed for the conservation community. So we're welcoming our partners here to use the space. I have no doubt that there will be ideas hatched in this building that will affect the future of Charleston County and the Low Country. Conservation takes time, it takes vision, it takes strategy, and it takes places like this to get together and have those conversations. All right, so what are we doing here in your neighborhood? I first want to orient you to the map and the different colors. So everything in red is a Low Country Land Trust easement on Wadmalaw Island and Johns Island. Blue is Kiowa Conservancy, one of our partners, also doing great work. Federal is dark green. I don't think there's anything federal in this focus area. State, you can see a piece, I believe that's Dungannon up on the Highway 17. That brown piece in the middle is Mullet Hall. You can see the urban growth boundary lines, and then the pink color is really important. We included this on the map because we need to be cognizant of the fact that salt marsh needs places to go. Salt marsh is having a really difficult time regenerating vertically on its own detritus because of sea level rise. And it can either regenerate vertically or horizontally. If it can't regenerate vertically because of sea level rise, it needs places to go in order to survive. It needs to move inland in order to survive. Why is that important? It's absolutely tied to our home values, our equity, and our private property. It's absolutely tied to our seafood industry, and it's absolutely tied to our resilience. All right, so we have over 620 acres of salt marsh around Kiowa protected in the Goff Point, Cotton Island, and what we call Kiowa River marshland. So that's all of this red here you see between the word Seabrook Island and Kiowa Island. If you look across the Kiowa River, you'll see a big chunk here below Legreeville. That's called the Bryan Dairy Farm. That's the largest conservation easement on Johns Island at 916 acres. We are currently working with a member of that family to protect an additional 49 acres called Oscar's Place. That's on the north side of Mullet Hall. If you go towards the Stono River and towards Folly Beach, you'll see a long, narrow strip of red. That's called Palmetto Point. That's 150 acres conservation easement, protected in a bargain sale easement. And then just across the highway, you'll see 98 acres protected. That's called Legreeville. Those are really important because they protect inflow into the Kiowa River, Chaplain Creek, Alligator Creek, and the Stono River. We mentioned Grayson Oaks earlier. Just across from Grayson Oaks, we closed on an acquisition on 40 acres, which we turned over to the Little League and gave them a place to have a ballpark and some woods around that. Just in terms of like, you know, when you think about the numbers, Johns Island is 4,500 acres total. We've only protected 8.4% of Johns Island. And I believe that number is around 48,000 acres have been protected. Oh, wait a minute. That number's not right. But anyway, 4,500 acres of the island. Oh, I'm sorry, the island is over 48,000 acres. We have protected 4,500, which is 8.4%, excuse me. Wadmalaw, we have over 9,000 acres protected, which is 32% of the island. So this shows density. You can see that Kiowa's done a pretty good job. While it is built out and a lot of people live here, it is still showing up as a lot of yellow, which is open space, and pink, which is low intensity for development. But you can see as you get closer to Maybank Highway and heading into Charleston, the density picks up, of course. The two largest unprotected properties on Johns Island are Ravenswood at 700 acres and Acorn Hill at 785. We are interested in protecting both of those properties, and we are fairly far along on the Ravenswood property conservation easement. We're also working along River Road, coming down from Maybank Highway and all the way out to Mullet Hall. We're working with the Kiowa Conservancy and South Carolina Farm Bureau on a number of active projects to try to protect more farmland along that corridor. So we'll continue to look for ways to partner with Kiowa Conservancy, and we welcome any conversations with the town of Kiowa to do more land protection in the area. All right, Angel Oak Preserve. You all are probably familiar with this place. This is an incredible asset for the city of Charleston, for Charleston County, and we believe for residents of Kiowa. We have an opportunity now to provide a more comprehensive experience at Angel Oak Preserve. The city of Charleston owns the 9 acres around the tree. We own the 35 acres around that 9 acres. And we are now in the process of planning a new experience at the preserve where visitors will get an ecological experience, a cultural experience, a historical experience, and even a spiritual experience. We will try to there will be reduced road traffic along Angel Oak Road. We will be using a certain portion of the preserve for parking. We're going to be building a raised boardwalk, which will keep visitors contained, but also protect the root structure of the tree. And we're really and we will have visitors enter through a welcome center. So we're really excited about this project.
Just
Sure.
go back, 450,000 annual visitors?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Thank you, Mayor. The city of Charleston keeps pretty good data on visitation to the tree. We have numbers now showing 450,000 people come to this tree every single year. Most of them pull up in their car, get out, take a picture at the tree, and go to the gift shop and then leave. So we would like to provide, again, a more comprehensive experience. We have contracted a world-renowned landscape architect to design this space and this preserve, and we believe when that is open to the public, we're going to receive a fair amount of media coverage for that event and for the unveiling of this preserve, which we believe will increase visitation considerably for the preserve.
I would just note that as part of our tax allocation this past year, I believe approximately $50,000 went to support the preserve.
That is correct, and we're very appreciative of that support. I want visitors to come and hear the story of how this place was protected. I want them to understand something about ecology in the Lowcountry and the Maritime Forest. I want to tell the story of the indigenous people, the early European settlers, the enslaved people who came here, the importance of this tree to the culture of the Lowcountry. When they leave this place, I want them to be inspired to help us do more conservation work. I want them to see that a lot is being done in the Lowcountry of South Carolina. Conservation is about people. It's about developing relationships. We have a lot of fun when we do this work. And it's about what we leave for the next generation. I believe that this is the most exciting time to be involved in conservation in South Carolina. We have federal money flowing, we have state money, we have county money flowing. We're doing big things. Anytime you've got those three things together, you've got big things happening in conservation. So I'm really excited about that. And I truly believe that what we do now and what we'll do in the next 10 to 20 years says a lot about who we are as citizens of the Lowcountry. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I just note that, you really connected the dots. Talk about the discussion we had on the transportation sales tax and less need for new roads infrastructure if you have less development. And it's going to tie in, I think, pretty well to some of the conversations we're going to have around Kiowa Next as well. But thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time, Matt. Appreciate it. Next, we go to updates, given that folks are patiently waiting for, I think, public hearings. I'll be very brief. One issue I just want to try to nip in the bud. I don't know if Councilmember Kay is going to want to have any comments in this regard as well. There was some IKEA traffic earlier today about dogs off leash. We just had the dogs, the off leash season has commenced. And I know there's a difference of opinion about some of this, but to be clear, dogs being off leash is a privilege. It's not a right, and there are obligations that come along with that privilege. And the bottom line is, if you want to be off leash, you have to manage your pet. And any suggestion that somehow it's the responsibility of a leashed pet and owner to manage the behavior of the off-leash dogs is just misguided. The problem for the broader community, because we have a strong dog culture here, is that if there are a few bad apples, people that aren't paying attention to the rules and potentially cause injury, then that's going to put pressure on us to get rid of the off-leash rules altogether. So please pay attention. It's going to be an enforcement priority for our code enforcement folks, both Beach Patrol and our regular CSO. So I hope everybody will pay attention and please manage your pets on the beach. The only other thing I want to bring everybody's attention to, you may have seen some of the work that's been done recently around the roundabout. That's both taking that really pretty heavy maintenance project to remove trees, particularly palm trees that were growing into the canopy of some of the live oaks, to open up sight lines. But it's a first phase of a project that we'll be working with a number of different stakeholders, including ARB, about what kind of goes in and around those islands that can be both aesthetically pleasing but low maintenance as well, and is consistent with our Grow Native initiative. But that's part of an ongoing project, and you'll see more work being done where the town is being a lot more intentional about maintaining and enhancing the entirety of our right-of-way and our public roads and right-of-way, including leisure trails. So more work will be done on Kiowa Island Parkway over the course of the next few months, and we'll keep the public apprised of that. And that follows on the heels of what we did on Beachwalker Drive earlier this year. With that, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Berner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to be brief as well. I don't have too many things to talk about, but they all took a lot of time. One of the items, Mr. Mayor, you didn't mention was that we're working through the contract now for the architect for the Civic and
Well,
Cultural
we're
Center.
going to get to that because we do have, we'll have to, it's on the agenda, but we'll have to take action to
But we're taking
defer that, yeah.
Fine, all right. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that was taking a lot of the time. In addition, from the safety perspective, I'm the chairman of that committee as well as for the Community Emergency Response Team. We started preparation for the marathon. We're going to be involved with the safety of the runners as well as the safety of the people watching and cheering on the runners. The week before, the month before, we were busy preparing for the hurricane that didn't come. Thank the Lord. We had the CERT people getting ready to be activated. We went to the tabletop exercise and we were ready to go, and thankfully we didn't have to push the button. But that took a lot of my time as well. And the last thing is, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be in the safety group participating with the resort with respect to unattended bag training, which is an event in preparation of the marathon. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Kay.
Couple of things. Speaking of the marathon, many of you may have heard that for the first time, the resort has asked the Go Green Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Resiliency Committee, to participate in its composting activities. So we anticipate a tremendous amount of food being composted and a lot of good benefit from that, and appreciate the partnership with the resort and their support on this initiative. Secondly, we've got show and tell on the Bobcat front. So those of you who are going to be lucky enough to come to Bobcats and Bluegrass on Friday, I hope that you have signed up, because I found out just earlier today that we've had 220 people who have signed up, and that maxes us out. So if you haven't signed up already, even though we anticipate we're going to have a lot of no-shows, you might want to still sign up, but there are a couple of good reasons to come. One is Rodney Scott. The second is Jim Jordan, who's going to deliver a terrific presentation. And then there are those cute little things that you're going to get if you come. And we've been working on the Bobcat preservation front through a lot of different avenues. I think just the enthusiasm around Bobcats and Bluegrass is an indication that some of our communication efforts and our outreach efforts to all of our partners, including Kika and the Conservancy and the Golf Resort, are seeming to have an impact. As far as the new building is concerned, comments on that can wait till that piece of the agenda?
They can, or you can comment on them now. I'm going to entertain a motion to amend the agenda to remove that agenda item and explain, that we're just not quite ready to go forward on that now.
Okay, and so when we get there, I will go more into detail on some of the details around the Resiliency Committee meeting last week, voted unanimously to recommend a whole host of resiliency sustainability issues be addressed with the construction of the new center. But again, details on that can wait. Thank you.
Councilmember Spencer.
Several quick things. There's an Infrastructure and Public Works Committee meeting this Thursday from 10 to 12 here in the back of the council chambers. One of the topics we're going to be taking up is trying to understand what's driving the Kiowa Island utility rate increase. We'll have a discussion amongst the committee this week to identify what our concerns and questions would be for KIU. And we're just now locking in a special call Infrastructure and Public Works Committee meeting on Monday, November 17th from 10 to 11, where KIU is going to come and help us better understand what's driving those rate increases. And then we'll use that when we learn to decide if there's anything that the town wants to consider as a follow-up to that based off of what they say. I mentioned during the Charleston County transportation tax session, but the Infrastructure and Public Works Committee, in partnership with Director Harris, who attends a lot of the CARTA activities and others, are going to start taking a more focused look at island transit, both to Kiowa, within Kiowa. Several people have brought some suggestions forward. As a note, the committee also includes representation from the Kiowa Island Club, Kika, and the resort, who run their own transit as well. So initially, we're just going to try to better understand what is available and what needs might be. Craig has reached out to CARTA to start some discussions. There's going to be a lot more about it. If we do anything beyond discussing it, it's going to be fairly complex. There's going to be a lot of things to think through. So we're going to try to just figure out, what kind of effort would that be if we did want to take a more deeper look at it. And then one thing that I learned through a community project that I was leading is we might want to take a look, as we're looking at short-term rentals, there's a lot of accountability for bad rental behavior on the property owner, but are there things that we should be considering for the property management companies as well? I've seen correspondence to neighbors from property management companies that were less than helpful when there are issues going on. And I believe that they should be better citizens and stewards of how they manage properties on Kiowa from the examples I've seen. So we may want to take a look at that as we start examining those issues down the road. That's all I have. Oh, yes, and thank you. And there is going to be a town veterans recognition event This Monday, it's November 10th, not November 11th, partially because the town's closed on November 11th as a holiday. At 11 a.m. here in the chambers, where the town, the mayor, and others are going to recognize our Kiowa Island veterans. So we've gotten a decent response to the RSVPs, but it's come one, come all, donuts and coffee, and recognition of our veterans. There's actually quite a few veterans on Kiowa, which was pleasing to see. So thank you all for your service, and hope we get a good attendance at that. Thanks, Stephanie.
Councilmember Spencer, I just want to comment on the proposed Kiowa Island utility rate increase. As you noted, the town has in the past intervened before the State Public Service Commission on rate matters. We haven't made any decision to do so in this instance.
Correct.
Until the work of the Infrastructure and Public Works Committee. I did want to ask you, I want to put you on the spot. I've gotten a number of inquiries as to whether there's any status update regarding cell towers after we passed our ordinance, particularly with regard to working with Crown Castle, the providers, starting at Ocean Park, Ocean Course, or further westward.
There is. I'm fast on my feet, so I've got an answer.
Okay.
And John Taylor and his staff, where's Director Taylor? He's back there. And I've been working with Crown Castle and the service providers. There is action underway for the Ocean Course Tower to do the siting for the temporary cell tower, and working through some details on that to increase service there. Director Taylor and I are going to, I see you coming up, are meeting with Crown Castle on the 18th and visiting the other 3 sites that are Crown Castle's responsibility. There is enough interest expressed to justify business case to expand and increase the coverage at those towers as well. John, did you want to add?
No, I think you covered. Next steps is to meet with Crown Castle regarding sort of assessing the next three, what I would say cell tower sites that would give them the ability to do some due diligence on tower upgrades for that matter.
And for anybody doing the math of the number of cell towers we said we have, we consider the site at the sanctuary a tower. That really doesn't need anything done. And then there's the Berkeley Tower, and then there's the American Tower, which is provides adequate coverage, we believe. Yeah.
Thank you. Town Administrator, staff updates?
No, I think you guys covered a lot of the stuff that I was going to cover, so.
Okay. The only thing I had neglected to mention, because I think there are tickets still available, is this evening's Kiowa Arts Council program. Andrew Armstrong and Genevieve Lewis, world-class pianist and violinist, doing what should be a fabulous chamber program, including Mozart, Ravel, Gershwin's Preludes for piano, and selections from Porgy and Bess, including Summertime. So it's at the Seabrook Island Club, and you could still probably reach out to our staff, Caroline Wall, if you were interested in tickets, but that should be a great program this evening.
Just as a reminder. I know I actually received a couple of emails. People did not realize that today we actually have municipal elections. So if you have not voted yet, please head over to Sandcastle before 7 p.m. tonight to cast your vote. For we have 3 council seat, or a mayor seat and 2 council seats that you'll be voting for.
There's no such thing as an uncontested election. So vote if you want the candidate that's on the ballot.
Now next agenda items are 2 public hearings. The first public hearing is on ordinance 2025-18, which is to amend and update the town's comprehensive plan. I would note with regard to this public hearing, the subsequent agenda item in old business is to consider and act upon the comprehensive plan on second and final reading. But first, we're going to do this, the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion to enter into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are now in public hearing. Are there any citizen comments? Anybody that would like to chat about the council's upcoming consideration of the town's comprehensive plan on second and final reading? Seeing none, can we move, do we have to move back to regular business and then go into the next public hearing, or can we just simply go into? Okay, entertain a motion to close this public hearing and move into a regular business.
So moved.
And second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I would now entertain a motion to go into a public hearing with regard to ordinance 2025-21, which is this is the beach overlay zoning district ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
John, do you want to introduce this? Let me just note at the outset that in contrast to the prior public hearing, which was not much interest in, I think there'll be a little bit more interest in this public hearing, but this is really intended to try to get input. We're not intending, and you'll see on the agenda, that there is no action being taken with regard to the beach overlay district at this meeting. This is simply to get public input to help inform our decision-making process on a go-forward basis.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, the community. I'll be introducing the proposed beachfront overlay zoning district. This particular item comes from recommendation from our planning commission. As the mayor stated, first reading was held on October 14th, and today there'll be no formal action taken, but really an opportunity to hear additionally from the community and moving forward what happens next. I'll outline. The purpose and intent of the proposed beach overfront overlay zoning district is multifaceted. One, it establishes or proposes to establish a consistent visual, spatial, and ecological transition. So there's the opportunity to create a buffer zone essentially between the built environment and our natural systems, which being the beach and dune system. The second component of that is protecting the integrity of Kiowa's beachfront profile. This is ensure that there's a view corridor there, as well as being able to have the habitat space necessary for ecological function of plant and our wildlife here on Kiowa. The third there is to promote coastal resiliency. As we've modified or updated our comprehensive plan going through that process, resiliency continues to be the forefront of the Planning Commission's embedding that into our comprehensive plan. So this particular ordinance is ensuring that Kiowa is sustained, or at least identifies from the beach side of the island the ability to be coastal resilient. And then additionally, just maintaining the enhanced and being able to enhance the ocean views, and that's particularly from different vantage points on the island or from the beach. If you're walking the beach, whether you're on the boardwalk, the integrity of the beach and its views is important. We know that over the past, the history of Kiowa has been, Kiowa's beach has been one of the most pristine natural resources as people come and visit. And so protecting that natural resources is one of the key important pieces of this proposed overlay zoning district. Where we are today is November 4th, our public hearing date. The Planning Commission, this isn't something that's been sort of drafted overnight. This has been vetted with the Planning Commission for quite some time, beginning back in the beginning of this year in March. And between March and August, there was some discussion, and not until September when there was a formal recommendation by the Planning Commission that led to a workshop that Town Council had on September 23rd. And following that workshop, where some additional comments were made, and I think that helped inform where we are today. First reading was held at our October Town Council meeting. Like I mentioned earlier, second reading is to be determined, but I anticipate us to have, we received a number of public comments already, and I think there's some opportunities to kind of help educate what's the proposed ordinance, and additionally, as well as maybe there's some additional tweaks necessary. So in crafting the particular ordinance, the Planning Commission considered several factors, and staff presented these factors throughout the initial process and kind of laid the foundation of the proposed ordinance. Today's recommendation outlines these factors that when we look at Kiowa as a whole, majority of beachfront properties are single-family residential, and most of those have been developed. Remaining, or majority of the undeveloped parcels, which are principally on the ocean front, are non-single-family residential. And those properties are larger in size. We all know that the two holdings on the beachfront, particularly in East Beach where the Sanctuary Hotel is, as well as the vacant proposed plans for future in West Beach for future development of the resort as well. Recent developments on the ocean front down in the west end have been created larger massing in structures, and that's been something that's been noted by the Planning Commission of a more prominent visual presence on the beachfront, which has been concerning to members of the community. And so this particular ordinance also responds to that factor. The majority of Kiowa's beachfront is a uniquely protection layer already. When Kiowa was platted, there's a natural protection layer of land that was dedicated to the community association. That traverses the entire, or majority of the entire ocean front. And that adds a natural protection where you would normally see on a beachfront community that houses are much more closer to the ocean. For majority of properties on the island, they are set back away from the ocean. So that was factored in to the recommendation as well. And then there are a handful of properties that are uniquely, as platted, extend to the mean high water line, opposed to they serve in that same sort of category as I just mentioned regarding that unique protection layer. Kiowa also is unique based on our setbacks of the beachfront. So although there are different types of residential, ranging from multifamily to single family, there are a number of different setbacks. And so those different setbacks across the entire beachfront was one of the things that's considered. Additionally, the state's jurisdictional lines, and that being a consistent a measure, is something that we took into consideration in crafting this proposed ordinance. That jurisdictional line is set by the state of South Carolina. We're actually coming up on that time next year around spring, early spring, where they'll be reevaluating the baseline and jurisdictional lines. As stated, jumped ahead a little bit, but that'll be done in 2026. That process, the state goes the entire coastline, and Kiowa and sort of where we are in the state will be in next year. And the idea of using the current 2018 jurisdictional line is that is already an existing currently mapped line. And so it's a reference point that we can use as a town, that it's already surveyed, and it's a consistent line that we can measure across the entire beachfront. So now I'll move and transition to the actual ordinance, and so this kind of gives you an overall summary of what's actually proposed in the ordinance. The primary thing that you need to note is it establishes 2 buffer zones. And so those 2 buffer zones, buffer zone A, which is what we'll call the most restrictive zone, and buffer zone B, which allows a little bit more opportunity for development, although it does restrict the types of structures and the amount of structures that would be able to go in those areas. The second is it prohibits erosion control devices. There have been a number of studies that the Planning Commission has reviewed to show the detriment of these types of structures on the beachfront. If you're familiar with a lot of the cases or examples that in the Low Country regarding types of structures on the island and the problems that they can cause regarding erosion and natural disasters, this was something that was built into the recommendation as well. It's good to note that beach walkovers are exempt, so this ordinance is not asking anyone to rip up an existing beach walkover or preventing them from having a beach walkover in the future. Those would still be subject to our local Kiowa Beach Management Ordinance as well as the state regulations. Then I think, which is a big one, what we've heard already from a lot of community members regarding non-conforming structures. So anything that's been legally permitted to date would be able to exist. We're not asking for folks to rip up existing homes or pools or anything that may fall into one of these proposed buffer zones. They would be permitted and move forwardly as a non-conforming structure. So this exhibit here shows graphically or illustrates the proposed beachfront overlay zoning district. Everything that you see in this black hash color, that's the overlay. You can see to the far left would be the ocean in the blue. And as you traverse to the right, going towards the highlands, the first line that you'll see is this red line. That red line represents the 2018 beachfront baseline. And so beginning at that particular mark, moving towards the highlands, we established a 50-foot buffer zone. That's the pink area. That is the most restrictive zone, as I mentioned earlier. Within that area, no structures would be able to be built. Moving another 50 feet from that buffer zone, even further into the uplands in this yellow area. This yellow area is our buffer zone B, and structures would be permitted in this particular area, but there are two essentially factors that would, two particular standards that would impact any potential development in that area. One, there's a maximum height limit in that particular area of 10 feet, and then the other is that it's subject to only 20% of improved areas, and so of that particular yellow area. So if a property owner wanted to put a pool or a rear deck or something in that particular area, it would only allow to have 20% of improved area of that zone. So I won't show this today as we're in a public hearing, but the town has provided this beachfront overlay interactive tool. So if you are wanting to kind of understand how this particular overlay transpose over your property, feel free to go online and you can kind of navigate that. I'll pause there, Mr. Mayor, if there are any questions. I do want to note what you all have already received, the few comments submitted for the record.
We have received several comments, and all of the written comments, and all of those will be entered into the public record. Members of the community are invited to offer their views or perspectives. If somebody wants to start us off.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Ms. Tillerson, my friend, Mr. McClellan, my name is Hamlin O'Kelly. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Buse, Byers, and Taylor. Some of you may have know our firm. I'm sure we did some of your closings, and we have a long history at Kiowa. Our firm's founder, Tommy Buse, did the sale to the Kuwaitis back in the 70s. He recertified title to the island in the 1990s. My partner, Custis Byers, and Joseph Garcia do the majority of the closings here on the island. So we're greatly familiar with the history of the island and the uniqueness of Kiowa. I'm here today for several property owners up and down Eugenia Avenue. Some of them have already submitted comments, including Henry Kent Holland, Leah and G. Aldridge, Vicki and Richard Burdoff. They've submitted their comments, and we agree with what they've said. And what I'm going to say today is basically a summary of their comments, because someone standing at a podium right here may have helped them write those letters. Back in 2009, we kind of went through this process with the state. Some of you who were here then remember there was a great hue and cry about the changes to the baseline and the changes up and down the coast, what's going to be redone next year. There were villagers outside of the castle with their pitchforks saying, "How dare you do this? You're taking our property. This is going to devalue my property." And that was property all the way from Defusky in the south to Little River in the north. And what our concern with is this ordinance is this is sort of a backdoor, for lack of a better word, taking of private property. By doing this 16 years after the state failed to do what it tried to do, we're worried that the town is now kind of overstepping what it's allowed to do, because the property owners up and down Eugenia will be negatively affected by the creation of buffer zones A and B. For example, if you look, and I'll just touch it because I don't have it. Almost 50% of these lots is now undevelopable if you all choose to enact this ordinance as it's crafted. The buffer zone is not taking into account the historical setback lines and the reality of the beach at Kiowa. And Folly Beach's loss is your gain. Thank God for the jetties, is what you all should be saying every day as you say your prayers, because this section of Kiowa out on Eugenia is one of the oldest sections on the island, and it's not just anecdotal evidence that the beach has accreted there, there's scientific evidence that the beach has accreted there over the years. And again, it's through the unfortunate erosion of Folly Beach due to the jetties being there, and there's no talk by the Army Corps of Engineers of removing the jetties anytime soon. So again, Folly's loss is your gain. The science that we've looked at, that they're referenced in our letters, is that the beach is really stable and has really accreted since Hugo. I mean, there are, of course, seasonal losses due to hurricanes and the nor'easter we had recently, I'm sure, ate into the dunes. But from 2014 to 2024, Monument Marker 2660, which is the Eugenia section of beach, has shown a great stability for the dune system in the West Beach area. The proposal that is before you that, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for explaining that no action was being taken today, because one of the things I was going to ask is for more time and more public comment. So this is good to hear that council has already heard that and listened to it, and there'll be no votes taken today. And I know there are lots of people here who want to speak, and I'm hoping my lengthy comments may shorten the process, because I know some people will just stand up and say ditto to what that guy said. What I'm worried about is my clients and other people up and down Eugenia and up and down the beach are very concerned about this being a taking. And I'll go back to a case that they taught me and Mr. McQuillan years ago. It's called Lucas versus Coastal Council. And in that case, Mr. Lucas owned property out at the Isle of Palms. And the predecessor to OCRM, a crowd called the South Carolina Coastal Council, enacted pretty strong regulations that rendered his lot unbuildable. And so what did Mr. Lucas do? He sued the state. Well, that case went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States that said if you enact a regulation that makes a property economically useless or economically detrimentally devalues the property, then you have to pay for just compensation, because you've enacted a taking under the United States Constitution and the South Carolina Constitution. And if there's a taking, for example, if Betsy Carrison Parkway gets further widened, everyone who has property along Betsy Carrison Parkway gets paid the value of what's being taken. And that's not Hamlin O'Kelly saying it, that's what our Constitution says. So we are concerned that the floodgates will be opened as to litigation, as to people saying, well, I can now, as you just heard from your planning director, hey, I can only build on 20% of the area in buffer zone B. God forbid I had a fire, I had a major storm came through and knocked down part of my structure. I now can't rebuild my house in that area. So that's the real concern, is about the economically viable use of the property should this be enacted. And again, it's sort of ignoring the data points and the science on the history of the island. We are not talking at West Beach and Eugenia with a real fragile beach or a changing beach that you have sort of the north end of the island, and Lord knows, we all know what's going on at Captain Sam Spit. So this is not the same. It's not an apples to apples comparison. Homeowners in this section of the beach have actually had to extend their boardwalks over the years, which again is a great thing. But again, your own reports indicate, and when I say you, I mean the towns, show that the beach is stable here. The purpose of the amendment, so we've been told, is to protect Kiowa's beachfront profile and dune system. Well, as the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I would encourage you all to, let's have some more tweaks. Let's have some more times, more workshops. And I know that there was a first reading done last month, but a lot of my clients and a lot of people up and down Eugenia who would be affected by this have told us that, hey, we didn't even know about this because we don't live down there and the mail goes there, or we live somewhere else and we're not at home right now. So if we could give full time for this to be vetted, not just by you all and by your planning department, but by everyone, that would be great. And we'd appreciate that immensely. And if I could just stand, and if the folks in the audience would stand who are sort of against this as written, I'd appreciate you standing now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Matt, yeah, you're done. It's my understanding you could rebuild if your house burns down. Can you comment?
That is
or
correct.
are you able to comment?
Yeah, I can comment. So under y'all's non-conforming use statute, these would be legal non-conforming uses. In the event of a force majeure event, hurricane comes, house gets torn down, they could build back what they have.
So I just wanted to make sure that's heard. So you can build back if you already have a structure there.
Correct.
Yes. So Mr. Kelly was incorrect in what he stated.
Yes.
If you please come to the dais.
If I'm a homeowner, and I am, and I choose
Yes,
to make,
excuse me.
I'm Andrew Francis. I live at 7 Turtle Beach Lane on Kiowa. I'm a homeowner. If I choose to make an improvement, maybe I'm not all the way filling or using my setback, so I might have another 8 feet that I could add or extend my deck or something. I could do that now. I may not be able to do that under this new ordinance. That could affect the value of my property. I'm against this.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Andrea Schijano, and my husband and I built our home on Eugenia pre-pandemic, and we actually have kept a lot of our vegetation that's on the property to protect the dunes, even though we've actually been asked or suggested that we do remove it because maybe we'd have better views. I guess I had a few additional things to say, but after hearing some comments, don't have to say them. But we respect the intent, my husband and I, of this ordinance, but we're concerned about the value of our real estate if this goes forward, if this is approved, on which we've paid close to $1 million in real estate taxes to date, and our ability to restore our home to its original condition in the case of any damage. Now, you just commented that you can restore. So in that case, I wanted to just propose, and I can do this in a follow-up email, not exactly here, change the language, because right now the way it reads, it says things like may allow, and it's not clear. So I had just some thoughts and some revisions to language for that. Again, really just the concern for property value and what we can do to the land, and I can follow up with an email and some suggested language. I don't know who to send that to, but
Would welcome that. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Mayor, council members, my name is Lee Oleski. My wife and I are homeowners on 63A Eugenia. It's a beachfront property, and we strongly object to the proposal as it's been written. And I don't want to rehash some of the things that have been said, but I do want to make it clear, we bought this home over a dozen years ago, and 2 weeks after we bought it, we had someone have a wedding there, and our house burned down. Completely burned down to the ground. So we had to rebuild it. I want it to be crystal clear. I know what you said, I know what you've said, but I've also heard what my counsel has said, that we would be able to rebuild our house if we have another fire. Anybody on our street or anyone who's affected on any of the streets should be able to rebuild their home exactly as it was in the event of a fire. We've also had to replace our boardwalk 3 different times as a result of hurricanes. We want to be crystal clear. I know it says the boardwalk can be rebuilt. What happens if it comes onto our deck or our home? We all know that the conditions we're living under, we're going to have another hurricane, and it's going to do damage to our house at some point in the future. There should be no question, but we should be able to have the capacity and the ability to rebuild without having to get any permission from the town, because we wouldn't need that today. And that should be crystal clear. Otherwise, this is an absolute taking of our property because we're within these buffer zones. I don't know exactly. I was out this morning. I tried to measure it. We'd have to hire more people in addition to the lawyers we've hired to figure out, are we at 100 feet, are we at 50 feet, where are we exactly? But we should be able to rebuild our homes in the event of a storm, in the event of a fire, or some damage that occurs to our property. There should be no question in the language with respect to that. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a real estate lawyer, so I don't know exactly what all the language is, but I've heard conflicting opinions on this, and I don't think there should be any question in terms of it. I don't want to take everyone's time, but I just want to reiterate that we will pursue this if we feel that it's not crystal clear in this proposal that we can rebuild. I don't think there should be any question. And, I think that there's a lot of people on Eugenia who are not aware of this. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not in the wrong by not paying attention to the signs that are up and maybe some of the letters that have come, but it takes time, and I think it's really a good gesture to hear that you're going to be delaying a decision today, which I think would have been absolutely premature in terms of its impact potentially on a number of homeowners. There's 40 homes on the street. There's 7 new homes going up. I doubt any of those new homeowners have any idea about this. Some of them, maybe they do, but, they're going to find out, wait a second, if something goes wrong in the construction, I can't finish my home. It just seems inappropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Lusky. I would just note for the record again, reiterate that the issues with regard to non-conforming structures are not unique to what might fall under this beachfront overlay. There are other non-conforming structures on and around Kiowa Island. As Mr. Permar has mentioned to us a number of times, there are many of them, but our grandfathering provisions do provide that you can rebuild if there's a force majeure event. I do want to clarify, though, that you said that no further permit would be required. You would still need to go through the typical zoning and building permitting process to rebuild, but you would be able to build without having to deal with the effect of the new overlay if it were to be implemented.
Right. All I'm saying is we don't want to change. We don't want to change from the current state that we bought our home with, that we've repaired our home with, that we've rebuilt our home with. We'd like it to be at the current state of approvals, whatever they may be. Thank you. Thanks.
Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Mary Helen Wade, and we're owners at 4210 Mariners Watch. I was curious, this is all based on the baselines and the setback line of 2018 South Carolina DHEC lines. We all know that in the spring of 2026, those lines are being reconsidered all throughout the coast of South Carolina. So could you please explain what that means and how that relates to this?
Yeah, so the current ordinance is crafted around the 2018 jurisdictional lines. As stated, in the spring we'll have new lines. What's written into a clause in the ordinance is that no less than 120 days after that new lines are proposed in existence, Planning Commission will review the ordinance to see if there needs to be any changes. And so if there needs to be any changes, that at that time that we'll make, but the 2018 will essentially be the line of reference for this ordinance moving forward, unless there's a change recommended by the Planning Commission and approved by Council once those new lines are established.
Even if the baseline setback are further landward.
So that would be what the Planning Commission would be reviewing. So they would evaluate where those new lines are, and if it makes sense in the interest of the community to adjust the ordinance or to adjust the buffer zones, then they would do that at that time.
Excuse me, John, may I ask a clarification question? Do I have to go? I don't have a...
Oh, you want to do it here? We can do it here. Gotcha, just go ahead and have a seat.
My name is Larry Rosenfeld. I live on Jack State Court, so I have no skin in this game. But my question is, the current dunes, are they in the white area? Do they infringe into the purple area? Do they infringe into the yellow area? I'm just asking for a clarification of where are the current dunes now relative to the three-colored part of that diagram that you just removed? Thank you.
So it would be, I'm gonna try to adjust this without getting too technical into the weeds, but it would depends on if you're asking primary dunes or dunes in general. I mean,
Protected dunes that I've always heard has been amassed into that one generic comment. There are protected dunes and there are dunes that extend into people's property. The protected dunes, are they in the yellow area, the purple area, or the white area, the seawood part of the purple?
so
Or do they infringe on all three? Do they cover all three?
I anticipate you're saying protected mean anything lower, anything that's below the jurisdictional baseline.
The area you're not allowed to build in.
So if your property boundaries, I'll use just one or two Eugenia here as an example. This particular line is their rear property line. We can constitute anything probably south of that would be probably dunes.
So they're technically protected dunes already, the yellow and the purple now. And people can't build in them now already?
Correct. So I think you're referencing what I mentioned earlier, the protected area that was conveyed to the community association that has an additional layer. I think that's what you're interpreting, which I would say that would be majority of this buffer zones fall into that area outside a few handspot as this sort of center portion of the island that we've been referencing regarding Eugenia.
It's already extant, it already exists.
Correct.
So already, without changing your ordinance, you're not allowed to build in there anyway, correct?
Correct.
So then the whole point is over properties that are, parcels that are built up that are already grandfathered into those areas.
I'm not sure I completely understand. I don't want to go without completely understanding your question.
Talking about buffer zone A, in which you'll not allow any building, but if it's already a protected dune, you're already not allowed to build in there. So why is there a new ordinance being passed if there's already one that exists that says you can't build in there?
Well, this would propose a consistent line across the entire beachfront. I think that's the difference. I think based on as I understand your statement or question, it would pertain to that particular piece of property, opposed that this would be.
Our concern is it goes beyond what exists. That's our concern. Because otherwise, why are we doing it? That's what I'm saying. You're absolutely right.
This is an overlay to underlying zoning that already exists. No question.
So I would say the base zoning standards would apply regarding your traditional setbacks for your property. Those would still be into play.
This would lie over on top of that. Other comments from, yes, sir. Yes, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. Russell Amundson, longstanding owner at 1011 Sparrow Pond on West Beach. I think the elephant in the room is the travesty on West Beach. I mean, I think that the consistency is an interesting concern, and I've really been enlightened by the landowners on Eugenia. When I walk on the beach, and I've walked on this beach for over 30 years, I don't mind a little cabana in your backyard. That's lovely. But a 6-story building that looks like a Hotel 6 right on the beachfront with essentially a rape of all the wildlife and forestry in front of it, isn't that the real concern here? When you're talking about, views, beauty of the beach, it's not a cabana or a family pool. It's a commercial building. So going back to your engineering reference, shouldn't height and setback be somewhat proportional? I mean, if you're putting up a 6-story frame, maybe the setback needs to be more than 50 feet, because it really does upset all of us walking on the beach, morning, noon, and night, to see that thing. And I think this is very polite, and it's consistent and colorful, but I don't think any of those family pools are interruptive to my beach walk. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comment. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question about the concern that several people have raised and that was raised yesterday about non-conforming lots and the ability to rebuild in the event of a natural disaster. Can that be written into the ordinance?
Yeah, it's already in the non-conforming ordinance, and we've actually very recently, maybe this year into
Tightened
last
that
year,
up.
tightened it and revised it to clarify with certainty that you can rebuild exactly what was there in the
If you
event
may
of a
recall,
storm.
that rose with regard to the timbers issue, so we
I
specifically
didn't
further
realize it
addressed it.
was included, though,
Yeah.
in the ordinance. All right, well, maybe that will resolve some concerns.
Yes, ma'am.
Kathleen Rest, 4428 Windswept. You're talking about the homes, but what about the townhomes and the villas? Are any of them in violation? How many properties along the whole line are in violation of this purple line or the green line? And you can rebuild a house, but what about the whole entire structure of condominiums if
Well, just
something
one
should
one
happen?
thing, there would not be anything, there would not be any building or structure that would be in violation of anything. It would be a legally non-conforming structure.
Okay,
That legally
non-conforming.
permitted becomes
Yeah.
non-conforming. The issue is, same thing with, correct me if I'm wrong, counsel, that if windswept were destroyed by
away.
a hurricane or a fire, you could rebuild windswept.
Exactly where it is.
Where it is currently without complying with the new standards. This applies to new development or the voluntary action of tearing down an existing structure and building a new one.
God forbid that the land goes with the hurricane, then where do you rebuild?
Then you can't.
Yeah.
Then you can't.
I mean, no,
But
because then there's no land.
So that's another whole question.
Yes, that
isn't
is
it?
another whole.
We won't go there.
Yes, sir.
Would you restate what you just said, that if someone were to voluntarily take down an existing building, that they could not rebuild in the same location?
That is correct. That is what the ordinance is intended to do. Force majeure would, I mean, believe, John, correct me if I'm wrong, that is what the Planning Commission had proposed to the council and council approved on first reading, is this is intended very specifically to address new development or a homeowner's decision to tear down an existing structure and rebuild, which they're fully able to do. They would just have to comply with the then current ordinance.
All right, and if you are in non-compliance now, and there were hurricane or fire,
Non-conforming.
you could rebuild in the same location, but you would not have the ability to take the house down and build a newer, modern structure in the same place if you're
Not
in
at
non-compliance.
not at the same place, not if it were in that buffer zone. That's
Well,
correct.
and we see it happen often where a number of older homes on the ocean front are taken down and something more modern goes up. That would affect the value of this older structure, because if they sell it, the new homeowner cannot take it down and rebuild a modern structure.
But there's nothing that precludes them from taking it down and building a modern structure. They would just need to be further set back than they currently are.
That affects the value. It most definitely affects the value.
John, is there a clarification?
The only thing I would add is they would be able to build back with the understanding that if they were desired to build back in that same location, a variance could be an opportunity to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. That would be the
You would
only-
have to obtain a variance. Okay, fair enough.
But herein lies the problem, is that the variance may not happen. This will affect the value of the homes that are on the ocean front. And we have, what, 7 different setbacks right now? Why do we need to change? Why, to be consistent, you're opening up a can of worms for people who already own homes on the ocean front. Why are we doing this?
Thank you, sir. Any other,
I didn't get to his point. He made it quite well, which is if we have no intention of selling our home, I hope my children and grandchildren get to use it. But if they do want to sell the home in 20 years, it'll be worth a lot less if someone buying the property cannot rebuild within whatever today's rules are of rebuilding. It's a significant taking, significant. We don't have a lot of property. There's nowhere else to build a house. If we move back 100 feet, we'll be on the curb and there will be limitations. So by doing this, you are decreasing the value of our home and our property significantly. There's 40 homes, I'll just speak for Eugenia, on Eugenia. You're talking about a lot of money, and I think we will litigate. We'll fight over this. And I think there are other homeowners that will line up and will do the same, because it may not be a hurricane or a fire, but it's sometime in the future we want to sell our home, and I don't think someone's going to build something that much better than what we have, but there are other homes that are small homes. My next door neighbor down the street, they may want to sell those homes, and the value is gutted as a result of this. That can't be the intention. That cannot be the intention of this town to do that. That would cost millions in litigation for the homeowners and for the town.
Lesky, any other questions or comments? Just a couple of general observations. Would appreciate the input. The reason we're having this public hearing and did not schedule second reading is because of the input we received, written input and other comments from the community. We'll continue to consider and evaluate that. I don't want to speak, I'm not going to get into the substance and don't want to speak for fellow council members as to whether the specific buffer zones that are established and the rules and criteria related to those are where we ultimately would want to land as a policy matter. But I would make just a couple of general observations. One, I mean, a couple of these letters, when they say, you know, arbitrary and capricious radical departure, as I'd mentioned at a previous council meeting, beachfront overlays are a pretty traditional, overlay districts generally, including marshfront and beachfront overlay districts, are a traditional planning tool. They're utilized elsewhere in South Carolina. They're utilized up and down the Florida coast. I was even pulling up today, you know, the American Planning Association Michigan chapter, talking about all the coastal overlay districts that occur along Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, et cetera. Again, that's fairly standard to support all the objectives that the Planning Commission identified and John cited early on, which is to protect the beach and dune system, to protect wildlife habitat, and to avoid building very close proximity to the ocean. Respectfully, Mr. O'Kelly, you actually referenced Lucas. And I'm not going to go into great detail, but I've got Lucas here and have read it on a number of occasions. You cited it correctly when you said it renders property useless, that constitutes a compensable taking. But then you said, and you also used the phrase devalue the property. To be clear, that is not referenced anywhere in Lucas. Lucas simply cited the proposition that it renders the property useless, that it is a compensable Fifth Amendment taking. If you want to talk about less than all economic loss, you go to the Penn Central factors, and that's something that we've got to look at. But Lucas did not cite the proposition anything other than useless rendering the property undevelopable or useless. Penn Central, if you go look at Penn Central, it specifically says diminution of value does not in and of itself constitute a taking. Now, as a policy matter, if that's something else we need to look at, absolutely. But it does not, people just, it frustrates me that people just lob around the term taking all the time, and it constitutes something that requires compensation. Guys, the world we live in, zoning is a restriction on private property use. Full stop. You can't do whatever else you want on your property. You're already subject to setbacks, you're subject to height limitations, you're subject to use restrictions. All of that is an impingement on private property rights. The Supreme Court's upheld and Commonwealth has decided more generally that those are reasonable trade-offs. And I would cite also from Lucas, where the petitioner, Lucas himself, and the court agreed with, conceded that the beach dune area of South Carolina shores is an extremely valuable public resource, that the erection of new construction contributes to the erosion and destruction of this public resource, and that discouraging new construction in close proximity to the beach dune area is necessary to prevent a great public harm. That was language from Lucas. What the court concluded, however, is the new Beachfront Management Act regulation did, because it covered the entirety of his property, not allowing him to build anything, was a required compensation, because that was the same thing as a physical taking. So I just want to set that record for the straight. Council can correct the record or not. I don't know if he wants to get into these issues like I do. The only other issue for the record that I'd want to cite is you cited a bunch of data from Kana and others regarding the impacts along the beachfront. As we mentioned at the last Planning Commission meeting or the last council meeting, the more recent study that we got from Coastal Sciences Engineering said that particular stretch of the beach was going forward stable to eroding. It's stable to eroding, not accreting in that particular stretch of the beach. The only other thing is we all take this seriously. I do. I spent this last Sunday spending an hour walking up along the beach side of Eugenia and then back on the land side of Eugenia, looking at each and every property where things are being built and see what the impacts are. And it varies from property to property. But you can look on a Google Maps. There are some properties that are being built, new large structures that are being built into the backside, excavating into the backside of the primary dune. That's the issue that as a public policy matter we're trying to address in order to protect critical habitat, maintain sight lines, the aesthetic, et cetera. The other observation, which I've just recently learned, so I've been a council member now for a couple of years, I guess almost 4 years now, mayor for 16 months. Who knows whether it's going to go beyond that or not. But the Eugenia, for both good and bad, is unique in many respects. R2 has all these setback requirements for like 20-foot setbacks. Not so on Eugenia. There are all these pre-platted setbacks, so there are only 10-foot setbacks on side setbacks for many of those properties. The setback from the oceanfront varies from property to property. There's no consistency, which is what we're trying to apply here all the way across the island. Those are the kinds of things we're trying to solve for. Whether or not what was proposed by the Planning Commission gets it exactly right, I don't know, but I'm confident that directionally it's where this community, I think, wants to go and needs to go. Any other comments of council members? No further comments, then I would entertain a motion to exit public hearing and to return to regular order.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We are on to old business. John?
Going to do comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Can we take 5 minutes?
There's been a request for a 5-minute recess. We are, we will
let's do
recess.
that. I was going to do one anyway.
You have the advantage of sneaking out. Yeah.
That is a pretty good response.
No, are you being kidded? Do you want one?
No, I'm not sure. Laura would say, what are we going to do this? So our dog would tear it up immediately. She would just tear it up.
Okay.
Recess is over. We are now moving on to old business, which is to consider on second and final reading approval of ordinance 25-18, which is the town's revised and updated comprehensive plan. John, do you want to reset where we are? And you can do so relatively briefly because I think everybody knows where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have come to a point where our comprehensive plan is turned to adoption or close thereto. And so, as you know, Planning Commission has worked through making some edits, and you guys have seen this particular document for a few weeks now. There have been a few minor, what I'm calling changes or additions, which you'll see some is outlined in red. Majority of what we anticipate for the comprehensive plan is summarized in the first few sections of the document. And so I do want to point and ensure that the community understands that if they don't want to read this entire 140 pages document, those first few pages, executive summary, keyword by the numbers, and our strategic action plan kind of outlines, and the blueprint section outlines the direction as a town regarding our comprehensive plan. Mr. Mayor, the one thing I think I'll call out, the few minor additions, one being the inclusion of, we heard from the Low Country Land Trust earlier today, is a similar sort of program or a scope of work that the town desires to embark on, of looking at how we can, as a town, leverage the ability to preserve properties, conserve, even dive even further into conservation, whether that be not necessarily just on Kiowa, but in the broader context of unincorporated Charleston County as part of our front door. It would be similar, so that's something that's been added. And you'll see in the Kiowa by the numbers section, the consistency there between what's in the actual document regarding our land use section. And then a couple of notes regarding a few resiliency matters. Give me 1 second here. Sorry.
26 and 27.
What is it you're looking for, John?
It was the focus to ensure that I was trying to accompany Mrs. K's regarding ecotourism, that was placed in as a I think an addition from the last time you guys reviewed. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, I think there are a few minor, I guess, edits that were submitted, but the substantive changes that were made, staff is just recommending approval with a few minor changes for council.
Thank you. Any questions for the planning director?
I have a comment. So recognizing that not everybody might want to read the 100-plus page document, I do want to just call people's attention to the Kiowa by, no, and I can't do this?
Perhaps we will, I would entertain a motion to approve the Kiowa Next plan on second and final reading, and then we'll open it up to questions and comments.
So I so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Questions and comments. Councilmember Kay.
Thank you.
those in favor?
So,
What?
it,
No, we're not voting yet.
Oh, okay.
when I first got involved with the Planning Commission, I was looking for answers on numbers and spent a couple of years in that pursuit. So if you read nothing else, Kiowa by the Numbers is your data source for what you need to know about where the community is and where it's likely to head. I very much appreciate all of the resiliency elements that have been included, highlighted, and emphasized in this plan. I think it's critical as we look toward the next 10 years. And once again, I'm just going to say that you and the Planning Commission have done a terrific job on this document. It's eminently readable. If you're going to spend 100 pages on a town document, this is one that's pretty interesting.
Thank you, Councilmember Kay. I want to echo those comments. I noted this when we considered this on first reading. We'll do so again. The extraordinary amount of time and effort that the Planning Commission put into this. Planning Commission Chair is not here, but represented by family member, but the Planning Commission itself is well represented by Ms. Schmerzel, and the extraordinary amount of time and effort that Stephanie Tillerson and John Taylor put into this as well. This was a heavy kind of lift from all. It was a lengthy process, longer than it needed to be. There were a couple of course corrections. But I think the end result is much better than where we started out. And I do appreciate particularly John's patience, and you mentioned all the Kiowa by the Numbers, because he and I have gone back and forth and up and down and all around in making sure that those numbers are where we want them to be, that they're consistent throughout this document.
But that didn't exist before, and
Yeah.
it's such an important data source for the town to have.
Well, I had teed up a bunch of those, but I want to give credit to Sandy Devine and Mary Beth Schmerzel on the Planning Commission, who really took the laboring oar in kind of crafting this formulation, this visual presentation, which I think is very, very helpful. I do just want to note as well that, John referenced the fact that there are not reflected in red lines numerous, what I would call, typographical changes, clarity comments and edits, et cetera. And I appreciate Stephanie's working through all of those. The only real substantive change is noted from what we approved on first reading was the addition of the recommendation to establish essentially a Greenbelt program task force. That came out of prior discussion at the last council meeting. I think that was a great suggestion. It ties in, as I mentioned earlier, to what Matt was talking about with the work of the Low Country Land Trust, ongoing work with regard to the Kiowa Conservancy. Again, it would be my view that we should be supportive of conservation initiatives, whether it's fee simple acquisitions or you get more leverage on conservation easements, not just in the town, on Kiowa Island or in the town, but in those properties that surround us that directly impact our community. As noted, the less you develop, the less traffic and congestion you have. The less developed, the healthier is our critical habitat and our marshes and the quality of water. So that's where back in January, when I did a kind of the state of the town and talked about, this 3 C's, connectivity, community, and conservation, trying to define our zone of interest as kind of essentially the Kiowa watershed. And I think, we can look forward to working with local organizations in order to promote more conservation. It's unfortunate, the numbers that he said, overall in the county, and that's mainly because of the Francis Marion Park, that a large percentage of Charleston County is preserved. Not so Johns Island right now, less than 10%. We can do better than that.
So what was interesting in this whole document, and it's just more of a statistical thing, because I like numbers. I didn't realize the resort has over 1,700 employees. And it's interesting to see the number of non-resident stay visitors are about 300,000. I had no idea. I never would have guessed that.
That's why I referenced with regard to the TST tax and why we probably haven't been as effective or as proactive with the county and county council as we might have is we generate a lot of property tax revenue for the county. We generate hospitality tax revenue, but we're also a substantial employment base here on Kiowa Island. Not just the approximately 3,000 persons who are employed by Kiowa-based employers. The resort being the largest, the second largest is the Kiowa Island Club. And then you've got all of the Eden's properties, but we support probably another 2,000 or 3,000 workers who aren't here most days, but are, employed by off-island employers.
It's a big revenue generator.
It's a big economic base.
So can I ask a question? So assuming this gets passed and you use the land bank as an example, what happens next? How do we enact these things? Because the land bank's an urgent thing, to be honest.
Operationalizing these is going to be, because there are a number of recommendations here, prioritizing and operationalizing can be the challenge. I think one of the primary, I'm looking ahead, kind of the primary purposes of our late January, early February strategic planning meeting will be to look at the Kiowa Next comprehensive plan, pull out from that, what are the things that we really should be looking at trying to make happen over the course of this next year.
Okay.
Just so you're aware, I've tasked our planning commission to begin that process already, so we'll have some introductory comments at our December meeting about prioritizing what's in the document as well.
So to answer your point, so I wasn't going to bring it up because we need to start the process and see what happens. But one of my outstanding questions was, we're supposed to establish a Kiowa Island Alliance.
Right.
Kiowa Island Alliance. It's great, but we have to start the process and see how it goes.
Right.
It's an important deal.
We do. We've talked about in the past just having kind of joint KICA board and town council meetings or community forums rather than decisional meetings. One of the challenges, we talked about this with the Planning Commission, is something like the Kiowa Island Alliance is really defining what it is and what its role is, because it can't be a decision-making body. The town can't basically delegate to other actors decision-making for public health and safety and welfare issues. So it's going to be more of a coordinating body than anything else, and trying to figure out to have a public agenda with a whole bunch of issues. Because of all the council members participating, it's going to be a noticed public meeting. Yeah.
In some ways, I think of a Kiowa Island Alliance as a vision or battle cry. Each of us have key island stakeholders on our various committees, the resort, the club, the KICA, and we participate and collaborate together on a lot of things, under the hood on many things. And then your town hall with Kevin.
One simple little issue that really kind of falls in the Public Safety Committee bailiwick that, for example, would fit well with the Kiowa Island Alliance construct is other additional emergency access on and off the island. If, for example, Kiowa Island Parkway, on the island particularly, at some point, it's a choke point, it's closed, it's flooded, there's a bad accident, what are the other ways you...
Well, we've talked about that before, and and I dropped the ball, I guess, was we talked about getting an agreement with people who own boats, just to shuttle us.
Well, not just that, but you would, if people have said things like using the leisure trails or the golf course trails, but that requires the cooperation and permission of those property owners.
I thought you were talking about if the bridge is out.
No, I wouldn't, not the bridge. I was talking about, for example, is there a way to come down Dune side, blow through the trees and get onto Beachwalker Drive? Do you go through the leisure trails or the golf courses north of Kiowa Island Parkway if it's completely flooded
Or
or
run
blocked.
through the vegetation at the Cape. That
Yeah,
we-
that's what I'm saying, yeah, right, exactly, yep, yeah. So those are the kinds of, one small example of things we could cooperate on. Anyway, any other questions and comments regarding the comprehensive plan? Wow, okay, in that case, we have a pending motion. All in favor of approval of the ordinance adopting the comprehensive plan? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Thank you again very much, Planning Commission, planning staff, everybody that's involved, and those that provided input to it. The next agenda item is, John, you're still up. This is second final reading of ordinance 2025-2024. This is dealing with membership issues on the Planning Commission and BZA.
Yes, so this particular ordinance regarding Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and our Landscape and Tree Preservation Board, there are minor changes that were recommended or at least changed from our first reading last month. You'll see that municipal boundaries was removed. That's really the substantive change from first reading. I don't know if there was any other particular comments regarding this particular ordinance from council members.
Could I entertain a motion for approval of ordinance 2025-24 on second final reading?
So moved?
Second?
Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, John, now you can sit down.
I was just making sure.
So, can we consider both 2025?
You can take them both
At the same
either as
time?
consent or,
Yeah, I would ask unanimous consent that we consider ordinance 2025-25, 2025-26 together. As you may recall from first reading, this was simply did two things. It moved out moved out from the business license section of the business license article, the provisions pertaining to franchise agreements, and moved them into a newly retitled, we had something called public utilities, and it's now just called utilities, and so it's moved under that section, and then it added a new requirement. We already had a requirement in that public utilities section that anybody in the town of Kiowa Island, any building or facility or residence needs to be on sewer. They can't be on septic. So we added a provision, said, well, if that's a requirement, then the utility provider has to be prepared to provide sewer service to them, assuming that.
Right, but it also says the owner has to pay the reasonable costs
Yep.
for a connection.
Yep.
So, yeah, they have to provide the service,
Yes.
but the owner pays the tie-in.
Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, hearing no objection to acting on those together, I would entertain a motion to approve both ordinance 2025-25 and 2025-26 on second and final reading.
Said second.
Any further discussion or questions or comments?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
And maybe I just missed what you just said, but why does it only talk about sewers? Why doesn't it talk about the other
Because
utilities?
that's all that exists in our current ordinance. The entirety of the article entitled Public Utilities is a sewer requirement to use sewer. And so rather than tackling all the other stuff attendant to other franchise agreements, which we are going to do in the fullness of time, and I need to have a further conversation with the town attorney about exactly that. This is just trying to address that, add a little element to the thing that was already there.
So it's cleaning up what exists, it's not taking the next step on that?
Yes, we'll be back to council
Right.
at some future time.
And you and I have talked, I'd
Yeah.
like to be in that
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah.
when you have that. Is there anywhere today where the requirement for a franchise agreement already exists for
Yes.
utilities?
Yes.
So is this duplicative for sewers?
No, it just simply moves that same language. It's in the business license, or it's part of the business license.
It's part of the business license part.
Right now, we just moved it out of business license into its own article.
I guess I'm maybe still a little confused. Is all of it going to move out of there, or?
There are 2 paragraphs in the business license that pertain to franchises. That was part of the mask model code. We are going to have a separate franchise, a more robust franchise ordinance. Whether the franchise ordinance will end up including all the substantive provisions in the ordinance itself, or it will be streamlined and will reference franchise agreements that will contain all those sub things, are things that we're working through. But right now, there's already under the code a requirement that anybody that is impacting our rights of way essentially is required to have a consent agreement or franchise agreement.
And a business license?
And a business license, yes.
Okay. So.
Those are really separate things. So.
Right, yeah. So I apologize if I'm unavoidably prolonging this or wrongly prolonging this, but why do we need 25, 26 then? 2025, 26, if it's already in?
We're moving it from the business license section of the code to the utilities section of the code.
I guess you're asking.
From an
why-
organizational
why do we have
standpoint,
to
it makes
move
a lot
I
of
guess
sense.
is
That's why I'm wondering,
really
why don't we
what it
just get rid of
Why do we have to
2025,
move?
26 and keep it where it is? I guess
What's that?
it seems, yeah, it's not clear to me why we aren't just leaving it there. Why do we have, why is there 2025, 26? Why not just leave it in 2025, 25?
So the section that you're asking about, which is, it was 4317, it was listed under the business, under the taxation business license section. So what we did is what I laid there to your right, is that we had a section that just said utilities?
Yeah,
Or-
it says
just
public
Public
utilities.
utilities. So what we did, Lance, was we essentially cleaned up 4317 because we said it's not in the right place. So this was it was in under the business license, this.
Right.
So all we did was to say it shouldn't be here, plus this has to be expanded. We cleaned up, so all of this is what we've added. And then we took this and we moved it here. So this is gone under here. So we've just simply cleaned it up and retitled it, moved it here, added this chapter 2. This was existing already under this section. We left that, and so we just added some other stuff in
This
here
sounds
in
like
regards to.
just housekeeping.
It was housekeeping, plus we added something more specific to other utilities.
We're going to want to have an entire article dealing with utilities, franchise agreements, franchise ordinances. It was all we had before was these 2 little paragraphs buried in the business license section. So we moved those 2 paragraphs over into the utilities article now.
Well, I'm glad we combined the discussion then.
So
Okay.
because these are joined at the hip. They are joined at the hip.
I was trying to understand, it seemed like we were just moving stuff around. I wasn't sure what the
Well,
intent and outcome was.
yes, we are moving some, that's exactly, some of the stuff we're just moving around. That's
Okay.
exactly right. But-
Very astute.
Okay, is that all clear? Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. New business. Ms. Schubert. Finance Director. This is ordinance 2025-17. This is a recommendation from the Ways and Means Committee recommending really two things. One is action that the council has to take with regard to adopting new classifications. And then we're also accepting a recommendation of the staff not to take further action other than that at that point in time. There's going to be a qualification to that, which I will discuss.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the state law, the South Carolina Act 176 requires all the municipalities and governments who charge business license fees to update the classes every 2 years, in every 2 years, odd years. Those changes are based on the IRS review of tax returns of all the businesses, how profitable businesses are. Because the classes are set as class 1 is the least profitable to class 8 most profitable. Based on the latest review, which was done in 2019, 2021, which was COVID years, they came with the new classification, and some of the businesses that you have it on Schedule 1 in your packets will change classes, and majority of the businesses are actually going to drop the class. So for us, it's about 1,800 businesses that currently have a business license that will drop a class. Of that amount, about 85% is short-term rentals. So based on that requirement that we need to reclassify those businesses, and with the scenario that they will report the same revenues they reported last year, we may see a revenue drop of about $65,000.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What is drop a class?
What
is the significance of that?
So the rates, so how the rates were established is based on the class. So class 1 pays $55 base fee. Class 2 pays $60. Class 3 pays $65. Currently they go up every $5. So dropping the class means that you're going to pay at a lower rate.
Okay.
Every municipality is doing this.
Has to do.
Yeah, that's
this
because
is an
everyone
action
has to do it, yeah.
There is a specific action that we have to take. There are consequences to that action. We could take additional action to address those consequences if we wanted to do so, which is what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
So one phase is to adopt the new classification that are pretty much mandated by IRS. So there is really nothing the council can do, only approve it. The other part of it is because the fees are up to the council. So if you all feel that we want to increase or don't increase or leave the fees unchanged, this is up to the council. So that's my other recommendation. Even though, like I mentioned, with the gross receipts same, constant as they were last year, we may see a little drop of revenues estimated. I still recommend that we do not change the fees. We leave them as they are, remain, and we can review them in 2 years, because every 2 years you can change the fees. Again, it's, I did the rebalancing, but this is just the estimator, like a tool to help estimate. But based on some trends in accommodation, fees on the island, I'll see that we're going to see an increase for this year. Hence, they're going to report more in the revenues. Another factor is that our fee schedule is really, it's very well organized. It's nice and clear. It's easy to explain to the businesses how it goes. So I would not like to change just one class or change one item. And another one, that $65,000, estimated $65,000 drop is very minimal comparing to the total revenues we collect from business licenses.
So everything you're saying is true. I would prefer not to do, I guess,
Or you have a question, or
Yes.
you have?
well, no.
Okay.
Okay,
Then,
you're right. I
then
beg your
if there are
pardon.
no questions, further questions, do you have any further questions for our Chief Financial Officer?
I do not.
No, I do.
Then I would entertain a motion to approve the ordinance on first reading, which would include an acceptance of the staff's recommendation. And now, if there's a second, move.
A move?
Second.
Now, if there's discussion, would be appropriate.
Thank you. I jumped the gun. I would prefer not to do anything that reduces our revenue, even though it's a relatively small amount. That's just an overarching comment. I know we can adjust the fees, but if our current estimate is that the fee or revenue will go down 65,000, I think we should do something to stop that.
Yes, so we can. We can change the rates, but what I would suggest, if you want to consider changing the rates, change them for everyone across the board, all the classes, not just the classes that were affected by the reclassification.
Why that? What's the rationale for that? Since just the ones that are affected by the reclassification are the ones that are benefiting from the reclassification.
Correct, but they were, well, like I mentioned, it was based on the statistics that IRS nationwide collected, that those businesses that, during COVID years, there was less people traveling, they didn't, offices were closing, so the businesses that the main revenue was from rental were getting less income. However, it was not a case for our businesses, our rentals in Kiowa, because that was actually the year where we had our accommodation taxes and revenues related to tourism were going up because the island was never closed, or the beaches weren't closed. But to be consistent with the rationale of that process, of that recommendation, that's why I would not recommend to change just for those businesses. I would recommend to change it for everyone.
I'm okay with that. I just don't think we should lower
want.
the revenue.
Can I ask you, Magdan, you said a lot of, are they increasing rates or are they changing rates? Or?
Some have, and I may be confusing this, but I think it was at Seabrook, they had Joe Cronin or somebody over there did a study of the business license fees that each municipality was charging each category.
I have it too. I have that schedule.
So, and because what the classification does is just change the base,
So your NAICS code belongs to a class.
Yes.
So right now, for example, the rentals were in class 7, they're going to be class 6.
But they go from 85 to 80
Yeah,
or something.
correct.
But the base, but there's also a fee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So what I would, so my suggestion.
And so that $5 increment is established, it's set. We don't adjust that. What you can adjust is the amount of the.
That's what I was going to suggest. If we would do that, right now our fee for every 1,000 is $1. It starts with $1.95. So if we would move that to $2, we would actually end up with additional $100,000 in revenues.
Well, I'm not looking
we
for
wouldn't be whole. We would be actually over.
I'm just looking to keep it the same. I'm not
So
doing it.
it's not that easy. Well,
It's hard to kind of calibrate.
to-
Okay, I understand. I understand you change it a small amount as a big consequence. I'm just wanting to get the point across. I'm not looking to make more money. I just don't
So
wanna
that's
lose.
why, okay, so if you you're supportive of, if you want to change, but change across the board for all the classes, but just make us whole.
Yeah.
No additional, I'll try to work with those numbers to get to it. The only thing is, again, this is estimates based on last year. What's going to be this year, I
Well,
feel.
but that's fine. I mean, that's,
No.
it's an estimate.
Yeah,
So you
wh-
use your best judgment and experience to come up with the best.
Well,
estimate.
I think, just so I clarify, I want to make sure I understand this, that your estimate of 65,000 revenue loss is by virtue of these two categories moving, two classes moving down. One,
So it's majority is
majority's in
but there
one,
is more, yeah.
moving from 8 to 7,
Correct, correct.
primarily rental, that if they had the exact same amount of gross receipts
Yes.
as they did last year, then the revenue effect would be $65,000 less because of this movement in
Right, I
the
understand.
classification. Whereas what she's saying, based on trend lines, it's distinctly possible that notwithstanding that move down in classifications, the average daily rate increases and/or you have higher levels of occupancy over the course of a year, you still may generate more revenues relative to last year.
Understood. All right, so now I understand a little bit better your basis of the estimate. So your estimate is not including, your $65,000 shortfall is not including an inflation factor of 2, 3, 4% or whatever of.
No, correct. It's
But
based
it's
on.
reasonable, they will go up 2, 3 or marginal
Well,
amount.
so I do know they will because based on what we collected, just one example, state accommodation taxes, which is 2% of rentals. Last year we collected, last year I'm talking about last fiscal year. While when we talk about business licenses, is less calendar year for businesses. So whatever they're going to report to us now, those businesses are from half of last fiscal year and half of this fiscal year.
No, but I understand, so I changed my comment.
there is-
If you're not including an inflationary percentage, then it's likely it's going to stay level.
Correct.
So then I changed.
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
so now that I know the
Even though
estimate
with the drop with the classes, because there is inflation, there is a
Sure.
rise in nightly rates, we'll see more.
Okay, I'm okay then,
So, and I just want to be respectful, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee had a view that was more in accord with kind of where you were going. I'm comfortable at this juncture approving the staff's recommendation on first reading, but I'm going to be open to on second reading if he sits down and/or you want to sit down and parse those numbers a little bit
Okay.
more finely
Sure.
to potentially making a change on second reading.
Great idea.
Part of it is we've got a compliance gun to our head.
Pardon me?
Well, we've got to get it done so.
Well,
that if
we have to prove on this on, we have to
do.
approve this on first reading,
Yeah.
then we have to approve something on second
Second
reading in
reading, yeah.
December.
Yeah, and
So-
I would think that
Defer it.
most of any additional cost that's passed on to the business, for instance, is going to get passed on ultimately to us, the consumer.
No.
So
No, like if I'm the person who's
Well-
got the house that's being rented
Well,
out.
yes, I mean, to the person renting, yes, potentially so, but that's not,
Me.
yeah.
but this is just rentals. There's other businesses too, and
Well, it all gets passed on to us.
It does.
And then you're hitting twice with an inflationary rate plus this. And if it doesn't, I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation on this.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.
I cannot make this next agenda items to consider approval of the contract with Caplia Co. I cannot make the motion, but I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda to take this agenda item not out of the new business agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion is that, as you will recall, we the council had previously authorized the mayor to enter into contract negotiations. Councilmember Berner's been involved in some of the back and forth with regard to kind of the draft AIA contract. A colleague of the town attorney's been working with us on that. We just haven't, we didn't get kind of a completely filled out draft contract until last Friday, and we just haven't been able to resolve all outstanding issues in the interim. And so that's the reason for effectively deferring this matter. It would be my intention to try to resolve these things very quickly and potentially have a special call meeting to act upon the contract if we can get it where we are, because I don't want to let that just slide another month. We want to get this thing started.
I'm okay with that, but I expect there will be a back and forth for an extended amount of time. But conceptually, I'm okay with what you're saying.
Hopefully, we can get it resolved in a matter of days. I'm reasonably confident that we can. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The last agenda new business is to consider approval of the Public Safety Committee recommendation to the county for a Kiowa representative on the St. John's Fire District Commission. I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Berner's chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Well, thank you. So this will be very quick. Steve Rolando is currently a commissioner on the St. John's Fire Commission, and his term is expiring. And he wants to continue to be a commissioner. And what we need to do is vote on whether to advance this to Charleston County, because they're the ones that ultimately forward the recommendation on to the state, I guess, for the fire commissioner. So all we're doing is recommending that Charleston County recommend Steve Rolando to be approved by the state. A little bit of background. So Mr. Rolando was a volunteer firefighter. He's currently a commissioner on St. John's. He's the chair of the Human Resources Committee, and he's also on CERT with me. So he's been around the block and he knows what's going on. And what I particularly like is his goal moving forward. He stated he wants to improve the emergency medical capability of the island, which strikes me as a really great thing. So I had a unanimous vote from the committee of nominating him for approval to Charleston County. And I'd like to have a motion to recommend him for approval to Charleston County.
Is there a second? You can move that. Are you moving that?
I'm moving it.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion? The only other thing I would add is the process was, I have no issue with the recommendation. The process was not as kind of robust as it should have been and in the future will be. It kind of was one of these where just I want to be reappointed and therefore kind of end of story.
Yeah, we didn't ask for volunteers until too late in the process.
Yeah. But with all our, anything that the council is considering for recommendation for board, commission, or otherwise, we've instituted a new policy and procedure that if there's a term up, that we're going to put it out there for notice and to see who's out there. So just because you've been on a commissioner board for a long period of time, maybe you're the best person to continue in that position, but you'll still go through a process and entertain the opportunity for other community members to express their interest, and we evaluate and weigh their relative merits.
Yeah.
I have a question on that. Would that apply only to standing committees, or would it apply to other subcommittees, for instance?
My view is subcommittees would be the prerogative of the committee, and it's only the committee itself that would be the case.
Okay.
That would be
I'd be okay with that.
Well, that's kind of the process we've been on, but we hadn't explicitly talked about subcommittees. But I think how the committee wants to organize itself once its members are constituted is up to them. But in this instance, there were also another little quirk is there were a couple of otherwise well-qualified individuals with strong Kiowa ties that expressed interest in this. As it turns out, and this is not a Kiowa chartered committee, state law mandates that such persons, the representative from Kiowa, be a Kiowa resident.
Yeah, and the other two applicants were not residents.
Strong Kiowa ties, but not
Yes.
Kiowa residents. So the state law is what it is, and very helpful in clarifying all of that. But any other questions or comments? All in favor of the recommendation?
Aye.
Thank you. Citizen comments? No? No? Been holding on this entire time. Going once, going twice, citizen comments gone. Council member comments. Councilmember Berner.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Kay.
No, I'm good.
Councilmember.
I think to take note of the time, this is quite remarkable.
You want to speak? You want to say something more?
No, I don't have anything to add other than thank you all for a constructive meeting discussion. We've worked through the issues, and stay tuned to the next council meeting. And be on the lookout for a potential special call meeting that would be related only to the architect's contract. Yeah. Yes, the meeting is